Chapter 1201. The powerful sealing formation blocked the abyss passageway. Ji Tianqing Yunyao's soul power couldn't penetrate the light curtain to check the situation inside. Even if they used their eyes to look, the passageway was dark and they couldn't see anything clearly. The two could only confirm that someone had entered the abyss passageway earlier than them and set up a sealing formation here. Ji Tianqing frowned and thought for a while. Then, he opened his pure heart Dharma eye and carefully observed the formation, deducing and calculating the way to break it. Yunyao stared at the sealing formation for a long time. Suddenly, she thought of a possibility and her eyes lit up with joy. Tianqing, this sealing formation doesn't look like it was set up recently. It should have been set up many years ago. I have a guess. The dark fire tortoise was originally in the abyss passageway. A soul refinement realm expert came here and chased it out. Then, he set up a sealing formation here. That dark fire tortoise couldn't break the sealing formation, so it could only stay outside in the abyss. Do you think it's possible? Ji Tianqing thought for a while and nodded. It's possible. But we still don't know what's at the end of the abyss passageway. Is that soul refinement realm expert who got here before us still alive? Is he still in the depths of the passageway? Yunyao frowned and thought for a long time. But she couldn't think of a reason. She could only say, everything is unknown. We can only break this formation to continue exploring. Tianqing, I'll help you break the formation. Ji Tianqing knew that her attainments in formations were not bad, so he nodded and agreed. Okay. Then, the two observed the sealing formation together and discussed how to break it. Ji Tianqing was a formation master. He was proficient in the structure and arrangement of countless heaven essence grand formations. But after he stepped into the soul refinement realm, he had almost no time to improve his attainments in formations. Even though he had broken some soul-grade formations, they were all low-grade soul-grade formations. As for mid-grade soul-grade formations, he had only encountered a handful of them. His experience in breaking formations was very limited. The sealing array in front of him and Yunyao was not only a mid-grade soul-level array, but it was also very complicated to set up. Wanting to break this grand formation was simply too difficult. This was a huge challenge for Ji Tianqing and Yunyao. The two of them carefully observed and studied for a long time, but they still couldn't find a way to break the formation. They discussed and discussed with each other several times, but they still had no clue. Unknowingly, an entire day had passed. The abyssal passageway was still silent and dark. In the dark tunnel, the two of them could not feel the passage of time, nor could they tell the difference between day and night. However, the two of them became more and more anxious and worried. Ji Tianqing could no longer hold himself back. With a grave expression, he said, Yao Yao, we can't go on like this. I want to try and see if we can break through this barrier. Yunyao considered for a moment and said with a solemn expression, Tianqing, this soul-grade mid-grade grand sealing array is very powerful. Its defense is also very strong. With our strength, I'm afraid it's difficult to break through it. However, other than this method, we don't have any other ideas. You must be careful. Don't be swallowed by the power of the grand formation. Ji Tianqing nodded and motioned for her to take 100 steps back. Then, he took out the broken sword, Burial of Heaven. He held the broken sword in his hand and stared at the grand sealing array. The incomparably violent magic power in his body continued to surge rapidly. As the magic power in his body gathered crazily, his meridians and body actually emitted a rumbling sound of thunder. His aura continued to rise, and his entire body vaguely revealed a soaring sword intent. It was incomparably fierce. After about 10 breaths of time, his essence, energy, and magic power were all raised to the limit. He finally waved the broken sword and slashed out with the most powerful sword. Heaven-splitting sword. A dazzling sword light that was 10 feet long lit up and illuminated the surroundings. A fierce wind also swept up in the air. Bang! The invincible sword light exploded with a power that could destroy the heavens and the earth. It fiercely slashed the huge light screen and exploded with a loud bang. The deafening loud sound echoed in the dark tunnel. It shook the earth and the mountains in the surroundings, and countless gravel and dust fell. The incomparably violent recoil hit Ji Tianqing and forced him to take 5 steps back. His face was pale. The originally dim light screen was also shaken by this sword strike. Layers of ripples and ripples were formed. A palm-wide crack appeared, extending in all directions along with a series of cracking sounds. This soul-level middle-grade grand ceiling array couldn't withstand Ji Tianqing's full-force slash. It shook violently for a long time and didn't calm down. However, the light screen was at least 10 feet thick. Even if a palm-wide gully was slashed out, it still didn't break. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao still couldn't pass through the light screen. Seeing this result, Ji Tianqing sighed silently and could only put away the broken sword. He couldn't break the grand ceiling array with his full-force sword strike. He could only give up the idea of attacking by force. He could only continue to think of ways to break the grand ceiling array. After a while, the shaking 5-colored light screen gradually calmed down. Although the 5-colored light screen gradually recovered and returned to its original state. However, Ji Tianqing was keenly aware that there were some subtle changes in the internal structure of the grand ceiling array. More veins and array bases were exposed. This was something he didn't detect before. Now that he had a new discovery, it allowed him to understand the grand ceiling array more thoroughly. He stared at the grand ceiling array and observed for a while. Suddenly, his eyes shone brightly. He shouted in a low voice, "Great! I didn't expect this grand ceiling array to be so mysterious. It actually has a hidden secret. Fortunately, I slashed it with my sword and exposed more of its secrets. Otherwise, I might not be able to break it even if I spent 3 days and 3 nights." Yun Yao also discovered this situation and immediately became spirited. She nodded and said, "Tianqing, this is really a pleasant surprise. Now that we understand the grand ceiling array better, we have more hope of breaking it." The two didn't waste any more time. They hurriedly investigated the veins and structure of the entire grand ceiling array and discussed the way to break it. 6 hours later, Ji Tianqing deduced the preliminary idea of breaking the grand ceiling array and began to try it. 10 hours later, his guess was confirmed. He had already gradually broken part of the grand ceiling array's structure. Yun Yao understood his method of breaking the grand ceiling array and helped him break the grand ceiling array. The two of them working together to break the grand ceiling array was faster. They could discuss while breaking the grand ceiling array. The efficiency was also higher. 16 hours later, the two of them finally succeeded in breaking the grand ceiling array. Swoosh! The huge 5-colored light screen lit up with dazzling 5-colored brilliance and shook violently. Following the disintegration of the grand ceiling array's internal structure, majestic and mighty magic power overflowed and blew a hurricane in the passageway. Roughly 10 breaths later, the 5-colored light screen within a radius of 10 miles completely dissipated. This soul-rank middle-grade grand ceiling array was cracked and cleared by Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao working together. Chapter 1202. Although Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao had exhausted a lot of their dermic powers in order to break the formation, they were still able to do so. However, the two of them were in high spirits. They could not be bothered to rest and continued to fly deeper into the tunnel. The tunnel continued to slope deeper into the ground and became narrower and narrower. Around 15 minutes later, the two of them flew another 100 kilometers and finally arrived at the end of the tunnel. Whoosh! Whoosh! The two of them stopped flying and landed on the dark brown rocky ground. This was already the end of the tunnel. The ground before them seemed to have been cut off. Below them was a straight and steep cliff. Above them was an empty space with a radius of several dozen kilometers. It was dim, like a huge cave. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao stood at the edge of the cliff and looked down. They saw that the cliff was only 1,000 meters deep. Below them was the rugged ground. The dark brown ground was littered with boulders and rocks. The air was filled with the heavy smell of saltpeter and sulfur. They could even see a smear of dark red in some of the cracks and ravines. The two of them could only see that it was red magma upon closer inspection. The ground with a radius of over 50 kilometers was like a rubble of rubble. Rubble was piled up everywhere and dark red magma flowed through it. No matter how they looked at it, this ancient and barren region did not seem like a place of treasures that hid divine artifacts. Yun Yao frowned in doubt. She silently released the power of her soul to investigate the situation of the barren land. She even murmured softly, "Strange. Why can't I sense the presence of the Neptunian divine orb?" Ji Tianqing stared at the barren land. After observing for a while, he suddenly discovered something. "Yao Yao, look over there." He pointed at the northwest corner of the barren land. His voice was rather surprised, and his eyes were filled with great anticipation. There was a smear of dark golden light in the northwest corner of the barren land. It hovered in the dark air. There seemed to be countless boulders piled up around the dark golden ball of light. There was even a powerful formation set up there. An indistinct dark red barrier of light enveloped the dark golden ball of light like an inverted bowl. Even from several dozen kilometers away, the two of them could sense that the dark golden ball of light gave off a mysterious and powerful aura. "Let's go and take a look." Ji Tianqing flew into the night sky without hesitation, heading towards the northwest corner of the wasteland. Yun Yao hurriedly followed him. While flying, she looked around vigilantly. Neither of them had forgotten that there was a mysterious soul refinement realm expert who had arrived here earlier than them. Neither of them dared to let their guard down before they were certain that the expert was dead. Shwa! Not long after, the two of them flew to the northwest corner of the wasteland and stopped outside the dark golden light barrier. The two of them looked down at the ball of golden light. Only then did they see the situation clearly. In a corner with a radius of 3,000 meters, there were 36 huge rocks that were more than 100 feet tall. These dark brown boulders were not uniform in shape. It was obvious that they had been shattered by a powerful impact. However, the placement of the 36 boulders seemed to follow a certain pattern, forming a mysterious formation. It was this formation that had imperceptibly gathered the earth-fire essence within 1,000 miles to form a light barrier with a radius of 3,000 meters, sealing this area. The dark golden ball of light that was suspended in mid-air had a sharp and slender appearance. It looked like an elongated sword or a long spear. Of course, if one looked closely, it looked more like a wisp of golden flame. It slowly wandered in mid-air, emitting a terrifying aura. However, it could not escape from the light barrier. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao looked at each other and saw the surprise and doubt in each other's eyes. Sure enough, someone has been here and even set up a great formation here. This formation that was set up with boulders looks very simple. However, it actually contains the heavenly Tao's principles. It's extremely profound. Even with my attainments in formations, I can't see any clues or traces. This is simply a great formation formed by the heavens and earth. The most mysterious thing is that golden light. It's like a sword or a spear. It seems to contain an extremely powerful and special power. I'm sure that the level of that power is beyond the soul-tempering stage. The two of them discussed this through voice transmission, and at this point, both of them nodded in agreement. In the next moment, a thought suddenly appeared in Ji Tianqing's mind. A look of shock flashed across his eyes. He said in a serious tone, "Yao Yao, that mysterious golden flame is definitely not the spiritual energy of heaven and earth or dermic powers. It's very likely to be divine power. Although the golden flame's power is restrained and sealed by a formation, its aura is still terrifying. The power of that golden flame is definitely not something that a soul-tempering stage cultivator can withstand. Its aura is a little like that of an essence soul stage cultivator. Yun Yao's eyes lit up immediately. Her tone was full of anticipation as she said, "Could it be that the divine item hidden here is that mysterious golden flame? If we break the formation and refine that golden flame, won't our dermic powers skyrocket and our combat power skyrocket?" "Of course." Ji Tianqing nodded and said in a serious tone, "However, this ingenious formation is very difficult to break. I need some time to look up some information before I can break it." He thought of the mysterious tombstone in the Kenshin tomb and the heavenly tome library hidden in the tombstone. The heavenly tome library contained countless secret techniques and miscellaneous secret manuals, including all kinds of formations in the world. He had a premonition that the giant stone formation in front of him, which seemed to have been formed naturally, was most likely a divine-level formation. Only by looking up information in the heavenly tome library would there be a glimmer of hope to break it. However, just as he finished speaking, a deep and sinister laugh suddenly sounded in the empty night sky. "Keek keek. What a surprise. It's been a few decades, and someone can break my illusory star 10 terminal formation and break in here." This sudden sneer broke the silence of the night sky. It contained a sinister evil aura and a trace of cold murderous intent, which made people shudder. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao's expressions changed instantly. They immediately turned around and looked around vigilantly. However, the night sky and the wasteland around them were empty. Not even a shadow could be seen. The old and sinister laugh seemed to have come out of nowhere. There was no source. Someone is hiding here. It should be the soul-tempering stage cultivator who set up the formation. Be careful. The formation that we broke is called the illusory star 10 terminal formation. I seem to have heard this name somewhere before. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao communicated with each other telepathically. They held their swords in their hands and looked around cautiously. The other party did not come with good intentions. His words were filled with murderous intent. He was definitely not a kind person. Chapter 1203. The wasteland and the night sky were silent. The air was filled with a scorching aura and a faint murderous aura. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao stood back to back. They both released their divine soul power to detect the whereabouts of the person who spoke. Just as the two of them were on high alert and ready to attack, the old voice sounded again. "Huh, two ignorant juniors. How dare you try to lay your hands on my treasures? You really don't know what's good for you. No matter what, the two of you will definitely die if you dare to trespass here." As his voice fell, two dazzling sword lights suddenly shot out from a pile of rocks 10 miles away from the two of them, stabbing towards the two of them. Whoosh! Whoosh! The two dazzling sword auras were both 100 meters long. They contained a vast amount of divine soul power and were extremely powerful. The dazzling sword auras instantly pierced through the night sky like lightning. They crossed 10 miles of space and arrived in front of Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao. At the critical moment, the two of them who were already prepared subconsciously formed a dermic power shield and resisted with all their might. One of the dazzling sword auras hit Ji Tianqing, but it was blocked by his dermic power shield. He was sent flying 100 meters away by the sword auras. The dermic power shield that enveloped his body and the dazzling sword auras shattered at the same time. They turned into countless white light fragments and splashed in all directions. Almost at the same time, Yun Yao was also sent flying by the dazzling sword auras. Her dermic power shield was shattered, but the dazzling sword auras were intact and pierced her body fiercely. She flew 100 meters away and crashed into the dark red light shield. She was bounced back and fell to the ground. She rolled a few times before coming to a stop. When she got up from the ground and flew back into the sky, her face was already pale and blood was flowing out from the corner of her mouth. Obviously, the mysterious old man's strength was much stronger than hers. She could not withstand his attack at all. Ji Tianqing saw that Yun Yao was injured and immediately became worried. He asked through telepathy, Yao Yao, how are your injuries? Yun Yao shook her head lightly and replied, it's fine. Don't worry. Focus on that guy. At this time, a thin and tall black figure flew out from a pile of rocks 10 miles away and stood in the night sky. That figure seemed to be very surprised. He stared at Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao and said in a startled tone, eh? These two little things were actually able to block this old man's sword with 70% of his strength? Not simple at all. You've all entered the soul refinement realm. Looking at the entire profound sky continent, young soul refinement stage warriors like you are as rare as phoenix feathers and unicorn horns. It's hard to find one in 100 years. When Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao heard the old man's voice, they carefully looked at the black figure and saw his appearance clearly. It was an old man who was more than 6 feet tall and wore a black robe. His face was thin and withered, and his eyes were deeply sunken, but his eyes were deep and sharp. He had a gray goatee on his chin, and his long white hair draped messily behind his head. He appeared extremely casual. Ji Tianqing stared at the old man and sized him up. Vaguely, he felt that the old man's appearance and facial features gave him a sense of déjà vu. When he thought here, he was instantly filled with doubts. He thought inwardly, strange, this old man said that no one could break the illusory star 10 terminal formation for a few dozen years. This proves that this old man came here a few dozen years ago and most likely never left. If that's the case, how could I have seen him before? Why do I feel that he looks somewhat familiar? At this time, Yun Yao seemed to have guessed something. With an expressionless face, she said to the old man with a serious tone, since you know the situation of the continent so well and you have the strength of the soul refinement realm, I think you must be a famous tyrant. Do you dare to tell me your name? That black-robed old man twitched his mouth and sneered disdainfully, humph. You little girl are ridiculous. I've already become famous on the continent 100 years ago. However, the two of you are about to die. Why do you need to know my identity? Yun Yao had already guessed that he would say this. Without hesitation, she said, we have no enmity with you, but you want to kill us as soon as you see us. How are you any different from the demon clan when you're so cruel and bloodthirsty? I'm the young palace master of Cloud Soul Palace. Since you're a famous powerhouse, you should know that Cloud Soul Palace's power is not to be trifled with. That black-robed old man was indeed startled. His deep eyes flashed with a touch of surprise. However, he was only startled for a moment. Immediately, he came back to his senses and sneered playfully, young palace master of Cloud Soul Palace. Yun Zhongqi's daughter. I didn't expect Cloud Soul Palace to be so lucky to have such a young soul refinement realm powerhouse. Hearing the black-robed old man's words, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao looked at each other with deep meaning in their eyes. Tianqing, this old man knows my father. He must be one of the top powerhouses and nobles of the human race. Yao Yao, think of a way to get information from him. Not only do we need to know his identity, but we also need to know the origin of that giant stone formation and the mysterious golden flame. Yun Yao nodded silently and was about to continue speaking. The black-robed old man's eyes fell on Ji Tianqing. His voice was playful as he said, a young man who can accompany the young palace master of Cloud Soul Palace must have an extraordinary background. You're so young, but you've reached the soul refinement realm. I'm sure you're not a nobody. Tell me, who are you? If your answer satisfies this old man, perhaps this old man will spare your life. Spare my life? Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and sneered disdainfully, old man, you're not worthy. I'm the first prince of the imperial residence, the #1 genius of the human race. The imperial residence? #1 genius? The black-robed old man was stunned and frowned. However, in the next moment, he threw his head back and laughed. Ha ha ha. What a joke. That's ridiculous. I've only been away from worldly affairs for a few decades, and such an arrogant and ignorant junior has appeared in this world. How dare he call himself the first prince, the number one genius? Ji Tianqing became more and more certain of his guess. He stared at the black-robed old man and sneered, "Old man, the continent is changing rapidly, and the world of martial arts is changing constantly. You haven't set foot on the continent for a few decades, so of course you're ignorant and ridiculous." As he spoke, he pointed at the giant stone formation behind him and sneered, "If I'm not wrong, this area used to be the territory of the dark fire tortoise. You broke into this place a few decades ago, drove the dark fire tortoise out, and set up a seal to seal the passage. For the past few decades, the dark fire tortoise could only stay outside in the abyss. You've been hiding here either to cultivate in seclusion, or to study this giant stone formation." When the black-robed old man heard this, he frowned again and stared at him sharply. He shouted coldly, "Boy, who are you? Let me ask you, is your surname Long?" Chapter 1204. The black-robed elder's words made Yun Yao's expression change slightly. She quickly sent a voice transmission to Ji Tianqing to ask. "Tianqing, this old man asked if your surname is Long. Does he think you're a prince of the imperial court?" "Yes." Ji Tianqing responded and said in a playful tone, "This old man saw that I'm young, but I have the strength of the soul-refining realm. I can even analyze the truth, so he guessed that I'm a prince of the imperial court." Yun Yao quickly asked, "Then why don't you lie and say that you're a prince of the imperial court and see how he reacts? If he's afraid because of this, it means that his power is restricted by the imperial court. Then, we might be able to analyze his identity." Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and asked in a serious tone, "Ao Yao, don't you remember which force's illusory star 10 terminal formation is?" Yun Yao shook her head gently and said, "I have a vague impression of it. I've heard of it somewhere before, but I can't remember at the moment." At this moment, the black-robed elder shouted angrily and interrupted their conversation. "Bastard, let me ask you, is your surname Long?" Ji Tianqing glanced at him and sneered, "So what if I am?" The black-robed elder's expression immediately changed. His expression was very gloomy as he muttered in a low voice, "No. This is impossible. How can the imperial court be so close to the Cloud Spirit Palace? The imperial court's power is checks and balances. He wants to maintain the balance of the 3 aristocratic families. It's impossible for him to support the Cloud Spirit Palace." As he muttered, his expression kept changing. He sighed with a complicated tone, "As I expected, this kid is really from the imperial court. No wonder he's such a genius." Ji Tianqing saw that the black-robed elder kept muttering, so he shouted in a dignified tone, "Old man, since you've already guessed my identity, what are you waiting for? Come over and salute me. All the humans in the world are the subjects of the imperial court. No matter what your identity or background is, you have to crawl under my feet." A powerful and majestic aura burst out from his body as he shouted in a booming voice, "I will only give you one chance. Kneel down and apologize to me immediately, and I will spare your life." Although he was impersonating the Son of Heaven, Long Yunxiao, he was even more imposing than Long Yunxiao. The black-robed old man's face was as gloomy as ice. His expression changed for a long time before he finally made up his mind. He slowly raised his head and looked at Ji Tianqing. Grinning coldly, he said with a murderous look, "Boy. So what if you are a prince of the imperial court? If we were in the central continent, this old man might have to be wary of you and bow to you respectfully. But you shouldn't have come here to die. Even more so, you shouldn't have ruined my decades of painstaking planning. I'll kill the 2 of you right now. I don't care if you're from Cloud Spirit Palace or a prince from the imperial court. You'll have to die here." The black-robed old man was extremely agitated. His tone was low and gloomy, and his eyes had turned evil. He sneered as if he had gone mad. He. There are only the 3 of us here. No one will know even if I kill the 2 of you. Don't blame me for being ruthless. You can only blame yourselves for being too unlucky. Die. As soon as he finished speaking, the black-robed old man raised his hands. His sleeves fluttered as he waved his palms, unleashing a blinding white sword light that covered the sky and earth. He had already decided to kill them. He had decided to silence them, so he used all his strength without holding back. 10,000 sword flash formation. The black-robed old man roared angrily and released 10,000 blinding white sword lights that were 30 feet long. They covered the night sky within a 30-mile radius. The area was illuminated by the white light. The air was also compressed and turned into a vacuum. Every sword light was extremely fierce and sharp. It could tear heaven and earth and souls apart. The 10,000 sword lights came down at the same time. It was like a sword formation that could destroy heaven and earth. It drowned Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao. Not only that, but the black-robed old man also used 7 divine soul Dharma eyes in order to kill them in one strike. 7-star soul destruction. Swoosh. 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 He controlled the 7 divine soul Dharma eyes that were as large as palaces. They exploded with destructive power and blasted toward Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao. Suddenly, the two of them were in danger and were about to die in the black-robed old man's attack. At the critical moment, the two of them unleashed all their strength and launched a counterattack. Milky Way ribbon. Yun Yao shouted and used her majestic dermic powers to form a shield to protect herself. She waved her sword and slashed out a 1,000-meter-long Milky Way ribbon that slashed toward the sword lights in the sky. Draw your sword. Ji Tianqing pulled out his broken sword and slashed toward the black-robed old man with all his strength. The 1,000-meter-long white light giant sword shattered the sword lights in the sky and arrived in front of the black-robed old man. The black-robed old man felt the terrifying power of the sword that threatened his life. His expression changed drastically and he exclaimed. "Damn it! Little bastard, you have such strength." He hurriedly waved his palms to form a few palm shadows that were as large as mountains to block the giant sword. Bam! 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 The palm shadows collided with the giant sword and a series of muffled sounds exploded. The palm shadows and the giant sword collapsed at the same time and shattered into pieces that flew in all directions. At the same time, the black-robed old man's 7 divine soul Dharma eyes struck Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao hard. Rumble. Amidst the earth-shattering noise, the two of them were sent flying and tumbled over 10 miles away. When Ji Tianqing was about to hit the ground, he neutralized the terrifying impact and finally stabilized himself. He stood in the sky with a pale face. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth as he panted heavily. Meanwhile, Yun Yao was sent flying over 10 miles away and landed on the ground with a loud thud. She smashed a pile of boulders and shattered them into pieces. She lay on the ground with her hair in a messy bun. Her beautiful hair covered her face. Her white dress and the front of her chest were stained with dark red blood. When she struggled to stand up, she could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. There was no doubt that she was severely injured by the black-robed old man in one move. Her combat strength was greatly weakened. After all, she was only at the first level of the soul refinement realm, while the black-robed old man was at the 7th level of the soul refinement realm. The gap between the two of them was too big. Even if she was a peerless beauty, it was impossible for her to block the black-robed old man's full-power attack. When Ji Tianqing saw Yun Yao stumbling, he knew that she was severely injured. Swoosh! His figure flashed and turned into a golden stream of light. He rushed to Yun Yao's side and supported her. "Yao Yao, how are you? Can you hold on with your injuries?" Yun Yao shook her head gently. She used her qi to suppress her injuries and comforted him. "Tianqing, don't worry about me. I'm fine. I can hold on." Ji Tianqing was filled with anxiety and worry. He hurriedly took out the green light treasure tree and channeled a majestic green light into Yun Yao's body to help her heal quickly. In the distant night sky, the black-robed old man sneered proudly. He was about to pursue and kill Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao in one fell swoop. Suddenly, he saw the green light treasure tree in Ji Tianqing's hand. His expression changed drastically and he was stunned. That's the green light treasure tree. Why is it in your hands? Chapter 1205. Ji Tianqing was busy treating Yun Yao's injuries. With the help of the green light treasure tree, he used the secret technique of the Wood Emperor umbrella. Suddenly, he heard the black-robed elder's exclamation. His body shook, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. He suddenly turned to look at the black-robed elder and said coldly, "You recognize the green light treasure tree? Who are you?" The black-robed elder's face was as cold as ice. He asked sternly, "Boy, how did you get this green light treasure tree? Tell me." Ji Tianqing vaguely guessed his identity and background. He deliberately tested him and said sternly, "This magic treasure is mine. What does it have to do with you?" The black-robed elder was so angry that he almost vomited blood. He roared furiously, "Bullshit. Since 1,000 years ago, the green light treasure tree has been the heirloom of the Duanmu family. When did it become yours? You damn bastard. What kind of despicable trick did you use to take the green light treasure tree for yourself?" Hearing his words, Ji Tianqing revealed a trace of a mocking sneer. "Ha ha ha. You old fellow, you've finally admitted your identity? You are from the Duanmu family. Let me guess. With your age and strength, and your decades of seclusion, you are the grand elder of the Duanmu family, Duanmu Peng." The black-robed elder's expression changed drastically. An extremely cold light flashed in his eyes, and his entire body emitted a murderous aura. Since his identity had been recognized, he no longer had to hide. He no longer had any scruples. "That's right. I am Duanmu Peng. Since you have guessed my identity, you should know that both of you will die today. Now, I will give you a choice. As long as you tell me how you got the green light treasure tree, I will give you a quick death." As he spoke, Duanmu Peng's entire body surged with invisible spiritual energy and spread it in all directions. His 7 spiritual energy Dharma eyes also spread out in all directions, forming a light screen with a radius of 50 miles. The entire area was sealed off by the blazing white light curtain, becoming a domain under his control. He stood expressionlessly in mid-air, staring coldly at Ji Tianqing. His clothes fluttered in the wind, and his aura was incomparably ferocious. Ji Tianqing kept the injured Yun Yao into the sword world and gave her the cyan light treasure tree so that she could recuperate in the peaceful soil city. He held the broken sword in his hand and faced Duanmu Peng alone, his aura rising steadily. "Ha ha ha. Duanmu Peng, do you really want to know the answer?" The corners of his mouth curled up into a mocking sneer, and his tone was very playful. Duanmu Peng had a bad premonition. He glared at him, gritting his teeth as he shouted, "Tell me. You damnable little bastard, what exactly did you do to the Duanmu clan?" Ji Tianqing slowly raised his left hand and made a throat-slitting gesture. He sneered and said, "The Duanmu aristocratic family harbored evil intentions and attempted to rebel. They have already been executed by the imperial court." Bullshit. Duanmu Peng was so angry that his face instantly became distorted. His blood and qi flowed in the opposite direction as he roared at the top of his voice. "That's impossible. Our Duanmu clan is loyal to the imperial court, we would never rebel. The imperial court would also never lay a hand on the Duanmu clan. You little bastard, you are definitely not from the imperial court." Ji Tianqing saw that he was about to go crazy and guessed that the Duanmu clan was his Achilles heel, so he provoked him even more proudly. "Ha ha ha. Duanmu Peng, you old bastard, you have been hiding here like a dead dog for decades. You don't even know about the changes in the continent. The current Tian Xian land is no longer the world you know. When Duanmu Huang died, blood spurted out of his 7 orifices, and his body exploded. He died in an extremely tragic manner. Even today, I still remember his twisted and painful appearance, and his crazed and angry appearance. His screams and roars still lingered in my ears. And the descendants of the Duanmu clan, Duanmu Yulong, Duanmu Feiyu, they all died under my sword. Ji Tianqing described it vividly. When Duanmu Peng heard this, the corresponding scene immediately appeared in his mind. He was provoked to the point that he went completely crazy. He roared hysterically and unleashed all his strength, charging towards Ji Tianqing. "Little bastard! I'm going to kill you. I'm going to tear you into pieces and grind your bones to dust." As he roared, Duanmu Peng released a vast amount of magic power, which condensed into a dozen blazing white sword rays that were 100 meters long, and charged towards Ji Tianqing. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. The dozen dazzling sword rays enveloped Ji Tianqing's figure from all directions, leaving him nowhere to hide. At this critical moment, he did not panic at all. He quickly spread out his golden wings to protect himself. Golden rock wings. The dozen blazing white sword rays that could destroy heaven and earth struck Ji Tianqing fiercely, causing a series of dull and loud sounds. Bam bam bam. Ji Tianqing's figure was engulfed by the blazing white light. He was even thrown back 100 steps before he could barely stop himself. However, the golden wings blocked the power of the sword rays, and he was unharmed. Duanmu Peng saw that he was unharmed and was stunned for a moment. He revealed an expression of disbelief. At the same time, Ji Tianqing withdrew his golden wings. He waved the broken sword in his right hand and unleashed a full power slash. "Draw your sword." With a wave of the broken sword, a blazing white sword ray that was 100 meters long slashed diagonally towards Duanmu Peng from below. The speed of this slash was as fast as the aurora and as fast as lightning tearing through the night sky. Duanmu Peng sensed that something was wrong. He was afraid of the power of this slash, but it was too late for him to dodge. Bam! Amidst a muffled bang, the all-conquering blazing white sword light fiercely struck Duanmu Peng, and it instantly slashed him flying. Even though he was at the 7th level of the spirit tempering realm, he was unable to block this slash. He flew back 1,000 meters before he finally stabilized himself and came to a stop. The sword ray dissipated, but there was a long and narrow wound on his chest. Blood flowed out continuously. He. A 7th level spirit tempering realm expert is just so. Ji Tianqing's lips curled into a cold smile as he mocked Duanmu Peng. Duanmu Peng was even more furious. He waved his palms wildly and roared as he unleashed a barrage of giant sword rays towards Ji Tianqing. Boom boom boom. With a deafening dull sound, the sky was filled with giant sword rays and saber rays. They drowned Ji Tianqing's figure. He was also sent flying, crashing into the edge of the divine soul domain. Fortunately, his physical body and soul territory were strong enough. He was only slightly injured and it did not affect his battle. He circulated his energy to suppress his injuries and opened the sword world to summon the Golden Mountain King. The Golden Mountain King knew that Duanmu Peng had encountered a strong enemy and was fighting fiercely. He was already filled with fighting spirit and could not wait to join the battle. The moment the sword world opened, the Golden Mountain King roared and jumped out. He raised his dark golden hammer and used all his strength to smash it towards Duanmu Peng. Chapter 1206. Duanmu Peng was chasing Ji Tianqing with all his might as he released a few shocking sword radiances. He never thought that the Jin Shan King would suddenly jump out and attack him with all his might. Boom! Amidst a deafening explosion, the gigantic mountain-like golden warhammer image smashed into the sword light released by Duanmu Peng. The gigantic 100-meter-long sword lights that tore through the sky were smashed to pieces on the spot and scattered in all directions. Duanmu Peng's secret killer move had been destroyed by the Golden Mountain King by accident. After all, the sword radiances were meant for assassination. Almost no one could block them head-on. However, the defense of the sword radiances was very weak. Seeing this, Duanmu Peng was stunned. He stared at the Golden Mountain King with a cold look in his eyes, and a murderous intent surged from his body. Where did this shorty come from? How dare you stop me? Die! Duanmu Peng cursed angrily. He immediately used a secret technique. He waved his palms and sent out 3 sky-covering palm shadows toward the Golden Mountain King. The Golden Mountain King swung his hammer with all his might and shot out golden radiances to block Duanmu Peng's attack. Unfortunately, he was much weaker than Duanmu Peng and could not block the attack. Bang! 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 The Golden Mountain King was hit by the 5-colored palm shadows and fell to the ground. He was smashed into the ruins. Duanmu Peng wanted to continue attacking and kill the Golden Mountain King. At this moment, Ji Tianqing had already pounced on him. He waved his broken sword and stabbed with all his might. Stab! Swoosh! A dazzling cold light flashed in the dark sky. Almost at the same time, the cold light appeared in front of Duanmu Peng's chest and shone with the brightest light. Duanmu Peng had been cautious when dealing with Ji Tianqing. However, he did not expect Ji Tianqing's sword skills to be so powerful. When the cold light shone, he sensed something was wrong. However, it was too late. Boom! There was a deafening sound. The dazzling cold light shone and engulfed Duanmu Peng in an instant. Even if he condensed a shield with his boundless magic power, even if he had a soul-level soft armor to protect his body, it was useless. The destructive power instantly tore apart his magic power shield and armor, crushing one of his arms. He was sent flying backward, covered in blood, and fell into the sky 10 miles away. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ji Tianqing chased after him with all his might. Holding the broken sword with both hands, he fiercely slashed out. Heaven-splitting sword. This was a sword that combined essence, energy, and spirit. It was also the sword with the most terrifying might. Boom! Before Duanmu Peng could dodge, he was struck by the 1,000-meter-long sword light. He fell from the sky and smashed into the ground that was covered in rubble. The ground that was already in ruins was immediately smashed into a huge crater, causing dust and gravel to splatter everywhere. A deafening sound reverberated in the sky. The ground within a radius of dozens of miles also trembled violently, leaving behind countless ravines. Ji Tianqing used 3 of his most powerful sword techniques. He continuously attacked and finally severely injured Duanmu Peng, causing him to be bathed in blood. His injuries worsened. His hair was disheveled, and he looked very miserable. He roared crazily. Bastard! You damned beast! I'm going to kill you. I'm going to tear you to pieces. His rage and murderous aura made him lose his mind. Ignoring his own injuries, he leapt towards Ji Tianqing without a care for his own safety. At the same time, he manipulated the power of his divine soul domain and unleashed thousands of white beams of divine soul light that shot towards Ji Tianqing like a rain of arrows. Ji Tianqing and the Jinshan King joined forces to block Duanmu Peng. They waited for an opportunity to counterattack and fight with Duanmu Peng. The 3 of them fought with all their might in Duanmu Peng's spiritual realm. They constantly used all kinds of secret skills. Huge light blades that cut across the sky, arrows, spears, and sword shadows that covered the sky, and all kinds of dazzling phantoms that looked like demons and divine beasts flashed in the sky. Deafening explosions continued to erupt like muffled thunderclaps. The aftermath of the battle between the 3 of them was like colorful hurricanes, crazily hitting the ground and countless huge rocks on the ground. Soon, 15 minutes had passed. In such a short time, the 3 of them had exchanged more than 1,000 moves. The Jinshan King was already severely injured. His body was covered with wounds and blood. His aura was weak, and he went back into the sword world to recover. Only Ji Tianqing and Duanmu Peng were left. They were still fighting to the death. Both of them were seriously injured. Their bodies were stained with dark red blood, and they looked very miserable. However, Duanmu Peng's injuries were obviously more serious. Not only did he lose an arm, but he also lost a leg. His body was covered with hundreds of wounds, big and small. Most of them were so deep that his bones could be seen. Blood kept gushing out. The armor and black robe he was wearing had long been shredded into rags. Even his two soul-level magic treasures, a magic sword and a magic seal, had been shattered by Ji Tianqing's broken sword. In comparison, Ji Tianqing's injuries were much lighter. There were only a dozen wounds on his body, and his chest and back were stained with blood. His hair was messy, but he was still calm and collected. He still had about 60% of his combat strength. At this point, the two of them had been fighting for so long, and the results were beginning to show. Duanmu Peng had lost his edge. He was no longer as strong and violent as before. His strength was getting weaker and weaker. When he once again manipulated his divine soul domain and condensed tens of thousands of divine soul sword lights to bombard Ji Tianqing from the sky, Ji Tianqing finally seized the opportunity. Now is the time. He ignored the divine soul sword light that blotted out the sky. His eyes were fixed on Duanmu Peng as he brazenly executed his most powerful move. Sword of Judgment. He shouted and summoned the spiritual sword. The golden sword soul turned into a 100-meter-long giant sword and attacked Duanmu Peng with all his might. The giant sword flashed with a blinding golden light and exuded a vast amount of spiritual energy. It exploded with a power that could destroy everything. Whoosh! In a quarter of an instant, the golden giant sword broke through 10 miles of the sky and hit Duanmu Peng. Boom! In a deafening sound, Duanmu Peng was hit by the sword of judgment. His body was drowned in the golden light. That sacred and dazzling golden light directly destroyed his magic power shield and defense, blasting his physical body into smithereens, and turning him into a sky full of debris that splashed in all directions. Many pieces of flesh melted like snow under the power of the golden light. They disappeared before they fell to the ground. Ji Tianqing's secret skill directly destroyed Duanmu Peng's body and completely defeated him. Swoosh! A dazzling, blazing white light flew out from the pieces of the corpse and fled into the distance in a panic. It was Duanmu Peng's spiritual soul. He couldn't believe that Ji Tianqing, a LV3 soul-tempering realm cultivator, could defeat him and destroy his body. Chapter 1207. Swish! In a short breath's time, Duanmu Peng's divine soul had fled nearly 10 miles away. He had already fled to the edge of the divine soul domain and was about to escape danger. As long as he could escape the divine soul domain, Ji Tianqing would definitely not be able to catch up to him. After all, the domain formed by the 7 divine soul Dharma eyes would bring Ji Tianqing no small amount of trouble and could obstruct him for a very long time. However, Duanmu Peng had underestimated Ji Tianqing's strength. Just as his divine soul was about to pass through the divine soul domain, Ji Tianqing had already arrived and opened the 3rd eye on his forehead. Thunderbolt. Within the golden Dharma eye, the azure eye released an endless amount of thunderbolt energy, condensing into a thunderbolt beam. Boom! Crack! The thunderbolt beam that was over 100 feet long struck Duanmu Peng's divine soul with a loud bang. Duanmu Peng's divine soul might be powerful, but the thunderbolt energy that Ji Tianqing had accumulated for 2 months was also powerful enough to destroy the heavens and earth. The blazing white divine soul ball was struck by the thunderbolt beam, causing several cracks to appear on it as it crashed into the ground. The already messy ground was once again blasted into a huge crater, causing dust and gravel to fill the air. With his divine soul heavily injured, Duanmu Peng fell into a temporary daze. His mind was muddled, and he could not differentiate between north, south, east, and west. It was even harder for him to move. At the same time, Ji Tianqing flew above the crater and slashed down with his sword, chopping at Duanmupeng with all his strength. Boom! The blazing white Divine Soul sword beam struck Duanmupeng's Divine Soul with a loud bang. This time, Duanmupeng was no longer lucky. His Divine Soul was split into several pieces on the spot, completely annihilated. The dignified Grand Elder of the Duanmu family, a transcendent powerhouse at the 7th level of the soul refinement realm, was actually killed by Ji Tianqing. He was only at the 3rd level of the soul refinement realm, but at the cost of serious injuries, he killed a powerhouse who was 4 levels above him. This was simply a miracle. If this matter were to spread out, no one would believe it. But Ji Tianqing did it. The ruins and the night sky within a radius of dozens of miles gradually returned to silence. The dust and gravel that covered the sky and the loud noise that reverberated in the night sky gradually disappeared. The surroundings quieted down and returned to darkness. Ji Tianqing landed on the ground, put away the broken sword, and picked up Duanmupeng's soul fragments. He stuffed these soul fragments into the broken sword and let the burial of heaven devour them to restore its vitality. Then, he circulated his energy to suppress his injuries and stop the bleeding. After treating his injuries, he swallowed 2 soul-grade pills and sat cross-legged on the ground, circulating his qi to treat his injuries. Although his injuries were very serious and he looked miserable, he was still in a very bad state. However, with his powerful self-healing ability, it only took him a day to recover more than half of his injuries. The dozens of wounds on his body had all healed, leaving only some shallow scars that would disappear in at most half a month. Now that his movements were no longer hindered, he ended the healing process and walked towards the northwest corner. The naturally formed boulder formation was still intact. Even though the battle between Ji Tianqing and Duanmupeng had turned the barren land within a radius of dozens of miles into ruins. However, the boulder formation was not affected or damaged at all. Within the formation, the dark golden flame that floated in the air was still moving slowly. Ji Tianqing stood outside the boulder formation and stared at the flame with anticipation in his eyes. Duanmupeng has stayed here for dozens of years. It should be for that golden flame. For him to spend dozens of years researching and exploring it, it must be a treasure above the primordial spirit realm. He stared at the mysterious golden flame and muttered to himself, "There are no divine artifacts or magic treasures here, nor are there any divine beasts or Neptunian divine pearls." The light that illuminated the sky for tens of thousands of miles was probably caused by this golden flame. No matter what, I have to get it. If he wanted to get the mysterious golden flame, he had to break through the boulder formation. He opened his pure heart Dharma eye and tried to observe the formation. He tried to find its network and structure. However, after studying it for 4 hours, he could only give up helplessly. This huge stone formation looked simple and crude, but it was actually created by the heavens and earth, and was nurtured by the heavens and earth. The entire formation was a single entity. There were no rules or networks to follow, and he could not tell what its structure was. Simply put, with his current mastery of formations, he could not understand this formation at all, let alone break through it. He was unwilling to give up. He tried to unleash a ball of 5-colored magic energy, which landed heavily on the dark red barrier. Boom! There was a heavy sound, but the dark red barrier did not budge at all. It seemed to be extremely tough and terrifyingly tough. A monstrous flame ignited on the light shield, bursting forth with a powerful counterforce. Ji Tianqing was already prepared, but he was still knocked 1,000 meters away by the terrifying backlash. He almost fell to the ground. His face was pale from the backlash of the array, and he felt a sharp pain in his internal organs. His injuries, which had not yet recovered, worsened. Damn it, the power of this boulder formation is beyond my imagination. It seems that if I want to understand and break through it, I can only place my hopes on the heavenly book pavilion. Thinking of this, he sat cross-legged on the ground and sent his soul into Kenshin's tomb. Swoosh! With a flash, his soul sword appeared in Kenshin's tomb. It condensed into a golden figure that looked exactly like him. He flew across the desolate wasteland and arrived near the 18 black tombstones. He landed in front of the first tombstone on the right. The dark and cold tombstone faintly revealed a mysterious golden light and emitted a powerful devouring power. He reached out and touched the black tombstone. The powerful devouring power immediately enveloped his entire body. Swoosh! He only saw a blur before he was swallowed by the black tombstone and entered another space. He was not unfamiliar with this space. It was the Heavenly Book Pavilion. Below his feet and in all directions were white clouds and mist. It was boundless. In the sea of clouds in front of him, there was a white jade bridge more than 10 feet wide. It was 100 meters long and connected to the depths of the sea of clouds. He stepped across the white jade bridge and quickly reached the depths of the sea of clouds. He arrived at the foot of the 1,000-foot-tall pagoda. The dark golden pagoda was as sacred and majestic as ever. It emitted an ancient aura. He stepped on the 99 steps and arrived at the door. He reached out and pressed his hands on the door. The golden dragon and fire phoenix pattern on the door lit up with a golden light and disappeared. Along with the muffled sound of creak creak creak, the 100-feet-tall heavy door slowly opened to both sides. Ji Tianqing had seen the mystery and majesty of the Heavenly Book Pavilion before. He was not too surprised to see it again. He stepped through the door and entered the main hall. He began to shuttle through the many bookshelves, searching for books on arrays. There were more than 100,000 books in the main hall. There were many types of books, almost all of them containing the mysteries of the world. Just the number of ancient books on formations alone numbered in the thousands. Chapter 1208. In the Heavenly Sutra Pavilion, there were more than 4,000 ancient books on formations. Ji Tianqing eliminated the books on formations below the primordial spirit level, and there were still 4,000 books left. Then, he spent an entire day to pick out more than 300 books from the pile. These books were all about formations of heaven and earth, and they were the most useful to him. He sat on a stone bench in the corner of the hall and placed the books on the ground. He used his spiritual energy to read them one by one. Although he used his spiritual energy to read the books, his reading speed was unbelievably fast. However, these ancient books had been around for a long time, and the contents were obscure and difficult to understand. He needed at least 2 hours to finish reading an entire book, and he could only roughly understand the meaning. Time passed quietly, and a day passed quickly. He flipped through more than a dozen ancient books and gradually understood some of the mysteries of formations of heaven and earth. In this world, everything was derived from the 5 elements of wind and thunder and various other forces. In other words, on a barren and lifeless cold planet, if there were 5 elements of wind and thunder, life could be born and evolve into flowers, trees, birds, and beasts. Therefore, the 5 elements of wind and thunder were the origin of life, and also the foundation of forming the world. Under the teachings and guidance of the gods, humans, demons, and other intelligent races learned to use the 5 elements of wind and thunder in the world to improve their strength and set up various formations. In this world, there were many wonderful formations of heaven and earth that were naturally formed by the 5 elements of wind and thunder. The formation process of these wonderful formations was very slow, but they could last for a very long time as if their power would never be exhausted. Moreover, these formations would change according to the changes in terrain, weather, and other factors. The weaker formations of heaven and earth were called feng shui layouts. This kind of weak formation could produce an invisible force that had a weak effect and effect. For example, the giant rock formation in front of Ji Tianqing was a more advanced and powerful formation of heaven and earth. This formation was formed by the fire essence and metal, earth, and other forces in the abyss, and had a lot to do with the terrain of the abyss. Ji Tianqing estimated that the giant rock formation took at least a few thousand years to form. So far, this formation had existed for at least 10,000 years. The power supporting the grand formation was the power of the earth, the abyss, and the magma within a radius of several thousand miles. As long as the terrain of these thousands of miles did not change, the boulder array would continue forever, and its power would never be exhausted. Similarly, if one wanted to break the giant rock formation, they had to start by changing the terrain and cutting off the power of the earth fire essence Qi to gradually break the formation. After understanding this point, Ji Tianqing finally had an idea. He continued to read the ancient book. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. 5 days passed quickly. When he read the 86th ancient book, he had accumulated enough knowledge and experience to finally comprehend the method to break the formation. It was clearly recorded in the ancient books that this sort of enormous stone grand formation was called the Heaven Star Earthly Flaming Wind Formation, and it was one of the 99 strange formations in the heavens and the earth. Within 10,000 years of the formation of the Grand Array, it was only comparable to an Essence Soul-level array formation. If the life of the Grand Array could reach 20,000 years, it would be comparable to a high-grade Primordial Spirit Realm Array formation. As for the Heavenly Star Earthly Fire Spreading Wind Array that was more than 30,000 years old, it had surpassed the Primordial Soul stage and reached the even more mysterious and terrifying Heavenly Tribulation stage. That level of Grand Array formation was like the power of the Heavenly Tribulation, and it was extremely dangerous and terrifying. Ji Tianqing closed the ancient book and thought with a solemn expression, according to the evaluation standard in the ancient book, the lifespan of this giant rock formation is more than 30,000 years. Doesn't that mean it has reached the Heavenly Tribulation level? But the power of the giant rock formation is obviously only at the Essence Soul level. It is too far from the legendary Heavenly Tribulation level power. Could it be that the strength of the Grand Array is not only related to the age, but also related to the geographical area? He had read hundreds of books and was now very familiar with the heaven and earth formation. Of course, he could draw inferences and master it. I don't care anymore. It has dragged on for long enough. Let me give it a try first. After making up his mind, he quickly left the Heavenly Book Pavilion and returned to the dark abyss. The ruins within a radius of 10 miles were as dark and quiet as usual. 5 days had passed, and there were no changes in the ruins. No one had broken into this place. In the northwest corner, the giant rock formation was still as stable as a mountain, and its power was vast and mighty. Ji Tianqing held the broken sword in his hand and used his divine soul power to probe it, calling Yun Yao, the Jin Shan King, and the others. Swoosh! The entrance to the sword world opened, and Yun Yao flew out first and landed in front of him. Then, a golden light flashed, and the Jin Shan King also flew out with the dark golden war hammer. Previously, when the two of them fought with Duanmu Peng, they were seriously injured. After 5 days of seclusion to heal their injuries had mostly healed, and they were fine for the time being. When Yun Yao saw Ji Tianqing, she asked with concern, "Tianqing, have you killed Duanmu Peng? Or did he escape?" Ji Tianqing smiled and said, "How can I let him escape? If he escapes from here, he will definitely return to Zhongzhou. When he finds out the truth about the Duanmu family's destruction, he will definitely take revenge on us. For an expert at the 7th level of the spirit refining realm like him, if he hides in the dark and waits for an opportunity to take revenge, the threat is too great. So, I have to kill him at all costs, even if I am injured, to prevent future trouble." Yun Yao nodded and said, "That's right. Fortunately, you have killed him." The Jin Shan King looked around and asked, "Young Master Ji, since you have killed that old man, why are you still here? Do you want to break the array and get the treasure inside?" Ji Tianqing nodded and said with a serious face, "That's right. There is a wisp of golden flame sealed in this stone array. It seems to be a divine power left behind from ancient times, and it might be related to the War of the Gods. I have read many books and studied it for a few days, and finally found a way to break the array, but I need your help." The Jin Shan King was surprised and nodded, "Young Master Ji, if you have any orders, please tell me. I will do my best to help. Ji Tianqing didn't beat around the bush and said straightforwardly, if you want to break this array, the first step is to change the terrain of the abyss. Jin Shan King, this is the strength of your Earth Spirit clan. Gather 800 warriors immediately and follow the route and method that I have set, and change the terrain of the land within 1,000 miles. Then, he took out a large piece of paper and handed it to the Jin Shan King. It was a topographic map with thousands of red lines drawn on it. Some were curved and some were crisscrossing like a fishing net. The Jin Shan King took the map and looked at it carefully. He patted his chest and said, "Don't worry, young Master Ji. Leave it to us. We will finish it in 3 days." Then, he went to gather the warriors of the Earth Spirit clan and began to dig tunnels around the abyss to change the terrain. Chapter 1209. The Golden Mountain King led 800 warriors of the Earth Spirit clan to dig a tunnel within 1,000 miles of land. The terrain of this area was constantly changing. The Earth Fire Essence Qi and the Metal Earth Power were all cut off. Ji Tianqing and Yunyao continued to cast spells and set up all kinds of soul-grade formations around the giant stone formation in the ruins that were dozens of miles in radius. He wanted to use formations to break formations, gradually weaken the power of the giant rock formation, and then crack it. Everything was going according to his plan, in an orderly manner. For 2 days, the abyss was calm and peaceful. There were no disturbances. Until the 3rd day, 2 Sky Origin Realm Monster Kings suddenly broke into the abyss. The 2 Monster Kings were heavily injured. Their bodies were covered in blood, and they fled into the abyss with wounds all over their bodies. They looked furious and terrified. When they encountered the warriors of the Earth Spirit clan, they attacked recklessly. They used their powerful attacks and blasted many big holes and ravines in the ground. Ji Tianqing acted just in time and killed the 2 demon kings in an instant. He guessed that someone might have found the fallen god cliff and fought with the monster kings around the fallen god cliff. The 2 monster kings were badly wounded and had nowhere to hide. They ran into the abyss. Seeing this, Yunyao hurried to remind him, Tianqing, Duanmu Ping used to set up a sealing formation to seal the abyss passageway. No one could break in here. Now that we've broken the seal, I'm afraid there will be even more demonic beasts and martial artists coming here. Ji Tianqing nodded and said, Yao Yao, you stay here. I will set up the sealing formation in the abyss passageway. Then, he left the dark wasteland and flew toward the abyss passageway. He flew along the passageway for 200 miles and stopped at a corner. He was ready to set up the sealing formation. Unfortunately, 2 figures wrapped in 5-colored lights were flying toward him at lightning speed. He scanned them with his God's soul power and found that they were 2 Sky Origin Realm Level 7 experts. As expected, Yao Yao guessed correctly. The powerhouses of Swinging Sky City have finally found this place. In the past, the God-fallen cliff did not have any worldly anomalies. There was also a dark fire tortoise guardian. No one could find the God-fallen cliff, much less come here. Now that the dark fire tortoise is dead and the sealing array is gone, these guys can still break in. How troublesome. He muttered a few words in his heart. Then, he cast a spell and sent out 2 giant flaming palms towards the 2 Heaven Prime powerhouses. This road is blocked. Leave immediately, or you will be killed without mercy. He shouted in a dignified voice, and his voice reverberated in the tunnel. When the 2 Heaven Origin Realm warriors saw the giant flaming palm coming and felt the unparalleled power, their faces turned pale with fright. Oh my God! There really is someone here. Someone actually broke into this place in advance. He must be thinking of taking the divine artifact for himself. The first reaction of the 2 Heaven Origin stage cultivators was that there was a divine weapon hidden in the depths of the tunnel. That was why Ji Tianqing had stopped them. They used all their strength to send out a sky full of sword radiance to block the giant flaming palms. However, after 2 loud bangs, the 2 of them were sent flying by the giant flaming palms and slammed into the walls of the tunnel. The 2 of them were burnt black by the giant flaming palms. They were severely injured and spat out mouthfuls of blood. The 2 of them rolled on the ground, their bodies drenched in blood and covered in dust and gravel. They struggled for a while before they staggered to their feet. Their hair was disheveled and they were in a mess. Damn it! This guy is so strong. We can't fight him head on. Let's retreat, or we will die. The 2 of them were shocked by Ji Tianqing's strength and fear grew in their hearts. Even if they were thinking about the divine artifact in the abyss, they did not dare to stay any longer. They hurriedly turned and ran. Ji Tianqing did not chase after them. He quickly waved his palms and set up a sealing array at the corner of the tunnel. 4 hours later, he set up a soul-level low-grade sealing array and temporarily sealed the tunnel. It was impossible for martial artists and demonic beasts below the soul-refining realm to break through this seal. After that, he returned to the dark abyss and continued to cast spells with Yunyao. For the next 2 days, the abyss was very peaceful. As expected, no martial artists or demonic beasts came to disturb them. 4 days later, the Golden Mountain King and the 800 warriors had penetrated the land within a radius of 1,000 miles. A labyrinth array, which was as complicated as a fishing net and consisted of thousands of tunnels, was finally formed. Those tunnels crisscrossed and connected in all directions. It was extremely complicated and complicated. Ji Tianqing took out 3 soul-level magic swords and released a great amount of magic power. They gathered the power of the 5 elements of heaven and earth and activated the giant labyrinth array. 8 hours later, the huge formation with a circumference of 1,000 miles was finally activated. The complicated tunnels were filled with colorful spiritual chi of heaven and earth. It was like a dream and was extremely gorgeous. When Yunyao saw this scene, she exclaimed in disbelief. "Oh my God! I thought you were just digging the tunnels and destroying the terrain of this area. I didn't expect you to set up a 1,000-mile array. Tianqing, your array skills have improved a lot. It's getting more and more amazing." Ji Tianqing slowly stopped. He lifted his sleeve to wipe the sweat on his forehead. His face was pale as he gasped for breath. He smiled at Yunyao and explained, "When I was reading the materials, I learned a lot of wonderful knowledge and understood some of the mysteries of heaven and earth. I can set up this 1,000-mile heaven and earth array because I need the help of the warriors of the Earth Spirit clan and the power of heaven and earth. The power of an array set up with one's own power is limited. However, the power of an array set up with the power of heaven and earth is infinite." Then, he stared at the giant rock array and smiled. The power of the giant rock array is weakening. The color and power of the dark red light shield are also weakening. It seems that my method is correct. I set up a heaven and earth array to weaken the power of the giant rock array. Yao Yao, we can start to break the array. The giant rock array's power source was cut off, and it gradually became difficult to support it. The dark red light shield also became weaker. In this way, the giant rock array became traceable, and it gradually showed the corresponding nodes and veins. Ji Tianqing studied the array for an entire day and finally found a way to break it. He started to break the array. With Yunyao's help, he continuously cast spells to break the giant rock array. 2 days later, he was completely exhausted. His mind was exhausted, and he had used up 60 to 70% of his magic power. Fortunately, the giant rock array was finally broken. The 36 boulders became dim, cold, and deathly still. The dark red light shield that covered an area of 3,000 meters also gradually collapsed and dissipated. The giant rock array was completely broken, and the power of the seal was removed. Chapter 12:10. Ji Tianqing had long known that the sword-shaped dark golden flame could move. However, the boulder formation had sealed it and prevented it from escaping, so it could only hover quietly in the air. Now that the boulder formation had been broken, it had lost its restraints and would naturally fly away. As expected of divine power. It's like a living thing. Yunyao murmured in surprise when she saw the dark golden flame fly across the night sky. Ji Tianqing had been waiting for this moment. When the dark golden flame flew across the night sky, he struck out with a giant golden hand and grabbed it. Bam! The powerful golden hand grabbed the dark golden flame. However, the dark golden flame was too powerful. It instantly shattered the giant golden hand with a muffled sound. Ji Tianqing was also knocked back 10 steps by the powerful shockwave. His face was pale. The dark golden flame only paused for a moment before it sped up and flew away. Damn it! It took me so much effort to break the formation. How can I let you escape from me? Ji Tianqing growled. Golden light gushed out of his body as he flew across the night sky and chased after the golden flame. After a few breaths, he finally caught up with the golden flame when it flew out of the wasteland and into the abyss passageway. Burial of heaven. Give me a hand. He growled in his mind and threw out the broken sword with his right hand. The ink-black broken sword immediately bloomed with dazzling divine golden light and turned into a giant sword 1,000 meters long. Swoosh! In the blink of an eye, the 1,000-meter-long golden sword flew in front of the golden flames and blocked its path. Bam! The golden flames collided fiercely with the giant golden sword, exploding with a loud bang. The huge golden sword was sent flying and pierced into the rock wall. It blasted a huge hole in the rock wall and created countless ravines. Fortunately, the golden flame was also knocked back dozens of feet and slowed down. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ji Tianqing flew to Golden Flame's side and stretched out his right hand to grab Golden Flame. He activated the power of the heaven-mending orb, and his right palm released a dense and mysterious white light, grabbing the dark golden flame in his palm. Shwa! The dark golden flame was enveloped by the mysterious white light. Ji Tianqing grabbed it in his hand, and it immediately struggled to escape. Ji Tianqing held onto it tightly and refused to let go no matter what. He even desperately urged the power of the heaven-mending orb to fiercely suppress it. However, the power of the golden flames was too strong, and it continued to drag him forward. He dashed left and right all the way, constantly smashing into the walls of the tunnel. Bang 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 bang. Following a series of muffled booms, the ancient abyssal passageway was blasted to pieces and collapsed. An endless amount of gravel and dust fell from the top of the cave, creating loud rumbling noises and splashing dust all over the sky. Ji Tianqing was dragged out by Golden Flame. Yunyao chased after him worriedly, but she couldn't catch up. About 20 breaths later, Golden Flame dragged Ji Tianqing 200 miles away and arrived in front of the ceiling formation he had set up. Ji Tianqing originally thought that the soul-level formation he had set up would be able to resist Golden Flame for a while. However, he didn't expect that Golden Flame would release an even more dazzling golden light and break the ceiling formation with a boom, creating a huge gap. Then, the mysterious Golden Flame dragged him through the gap in the formation and continued to fly out of the tunnel. Damn it! Why does this wisp of god power seem to have intelligence? Ji Tianqing muttered to himself in shock. His heart was filled with depression. Golden Flame continued to drag him out, crashing into the abyss passageway along the way, destroying it and turning it into a pile of ruins. Yunyao and the Sword of Burial of Heaven chased after him, anxiously trying to find a way to save Ji Tianqing. Not long after, Golden Flame flew out of the abyss passageway with Ji Tianqing and into the pitch-black abyss. This abyss was located under the God-falling cliff. It was the place where Ji Tianqing had killed the dark fire tortoise. Fortunately, Golden Flame's power had weakened a bit, and its flying speed had slowed down a lot. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the Sword of Burial of Heaven and Yunyao quickly caught up and joined forces to help Ji Tianqing suppress the mysterious Golden Flame. The Sword of Burial of Heaven was second only to primordial spirit-grade Dharma treasures. Its power was unparalleled. With its help to suppress golden flame, the pressure on Ji Tianqing was greatly reduced, and he landed on the ground from the sky. He desperately urged the power of the heaven-mending orb to quickly devour the mysterious golden flame. Soon, golden flame calmed down. 15 minutes later, golden flame's struggle became weaker and weaker, and it was gradually suppressed by the heaven-mending orb. Another hour later, golden flame was completely devoured by the heaven-mending orb. It turned into thousands of golden threads and entered Ji Tianqing's body, sealed in his mind. The heaven-mending orb wrapped golden flame and slowly refined it. Only then did Ji Tianqing heave a sigh of relief. Phew! This golden flame is really difficult to deal with. Its power is unparalleled, and it's even stronger than primordial spirit supremes. If it weren't for the help of the Sword of Burial of Heaven and the heaven-mending orb, I'm afraid I wouldn't have been able to subdue it. Thinking of this, he was both glad and full of expectations for the mysterious golden flame. He couldn't help but imagine how powerful he would be after the heaven-mending orb helped him refine golden flame. However, the most important thing now was to adjust his breathing and recover his magic power. He hurriedly took out 2 pills and swallowed them. He sat cross-legged on the ground and began to adjust his breathing. Yao Yao, Sword of Burial of Heaven, protect me. I need 6 hours to cultivate. Yunyao nodded and silently guarded him. The Sword of Burial of Heaven also floated in mid-air, monitoring all the movements around it. Ji Tianqing quickly entered a state of cultivation. His whole body was enveloped in a hazy dazzling light. 2 hours later, Burial of Heaven's voice suddenly came from the broken sword. It said to Yunyao, "You stay here and guard. I'll be back soon." After saying that, the broken sword flew away with a swoosh and soon disappeared into the darkness. Yunyao didn't have time to ask what it was going to do. She could only keep her doubts in her heart. After a while, she saw 2 dazzling lights suddenly flash in the night sky 20 miles away, followed by a loud dull sound. However, the 2 dazzling lights were immediately extinguished. The loud sound also quickly dissipated. Not long after, Burial of Heaven flew back and quietly landed beside Ji Tianqing. Yunyao couldn't help but ask, "Burial of Heaven, what did you do just now?" Burial of Heaven said in a low voice, "There were 2 sneaky guys who had been watching from afar, secretly setting up formations and traps. I saw that they were plotting something, so I killed them." Yunyao was startled. She couldn't help but secretly click her tongue. Burial of Heaven is really ruthless. Those 2 guys were too unlucky. For the next few hours, the abyss was very calm. After 6 hours, Ji Tianqing's magic power had recovered to 80%. He temporarily ended his cultivation. When he opened his eyes, he felt a burning sensation in his left hand. He looked down. Chapter 12:11. He could tell at a glance that the mysterious golden mark was related to the golden flame that he had refined. The golden flame mark was only as big as a thumb. It was lifelike and revealed a mysterious and powerful aura. Ji Tianqing could faintly feel that his entire left arm had undergone an invisible change. It seemed to be as heavy as a mountain and contained the power to destroy heaven and earth. Could it be that the heaven-mending orb has refined that strand of divine power? Otherwise, why would there be a golden flame mark on the back of my left arm? He frowned doubtfully and quickly checked the heaven-mending orb in his mind. He saw that the white heaven-mending orb was sleeping peacefully in his mind. The strands of golden divine power that were originally in the heaven-mending orb had already disappeared. There was no doubt that the mysterious golden flame had been refined and turned into a mark on the back of his hand. That golden flame is extremely powerful. I wonder what effect it will have after I've refined it. Ji Tianqing was full of expectation. He slowly raised his left arm and urged his magic power to hit the night sky in front of him. Suddenly, a torrential golden divine flame gushed out from his palm and condensed into a 3-meter-long golden spear that was as thick as an arm. The shape of the spear was simple and elegant. It was like a divine spear held by the gods in the legends. It was incomparably sharp and seemed to be able to destroy all obstacles in the world. Whoosh! With an ear-piercing sound, the golden divine spear pierced through the night sky. It was faster than the speed of light and instantly reached a distance of 30 miles away. Immediately after, a dazzling golden light exploded and covered the night sky within a radius of 20 miles. The earth-shattering gravel and dust crazily splashed in all directions. The abyss within a radius of a few dozen miles trembled violently. Countless gullies appeared on the ground and the hard rock walls collapsed for a radius of a few dozen miles. Endless boulders and dust fell from the cliff as if a 1,000-meter-tall mountain had collapsed. The momentum was earth-shattering. Only now did the earth-shattering noise reach Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao's ears. The two of them were immediately stunned. Their eyes widened slightly as they looked at the scene of the mountain collapsing and the ground cracking in disbelief. They exclaimed in surprise. "Tianqing, the rocks on that cliff are even harder than refined steel. How could your spear have such terrifying power when it was thrown out? If that spear had struck the expert in the soul refinement realm, then wouldn't he have been blasted into bits on the spot? The power of that mysterious golden flame is really too strong." Ji Tianqing's emotions were somewhat agitated, and he couldn't help but shout in a low voice, "I clearly only used 20% of my strength just now, and it had such terrifying power. If I were to use my full strength, wouldn't that divine spear be able to kill an expert like Duan Mupeng on the spot?" When he thought of this, he was filled with excitement and anticipation. He really wanted to find an opportunity to test out the power of the golden divine spear at full power. The mysterious golden flame imprint, the ancient dark golden divine spear. I have another ultimate skill that is 10 times more powerful than the burning heaven palm. In the future, when I'm strong enough, I'll be able to unleash the full power of the mysterious golden flame. With a single strike of my divine spear, I'll definitely be able to kill a supreme primordial spirit realm cultivator. I shall call this ultimate skill the God-slaying spear. As he spoke excitedly, he lowered his head to observe the golden flame imprint on the back of his left hand, silently sensing the changes in his strength. Although he had just released the God-slaying spear, he didn't feel any loss of strength or weakness. Apparently, the divine power he had released just now was just a drop in the ocean for the mysterious golden flame. At this moment, Yun Yao suddenly raised her head to look at the night sky above and reminded, "Tianqing, look at the sky above the abyss." Ji Tianqing looked in the direction she was pointing at and looked up at the sky. He saw specks of light shining in the night sky hundreds of miles high. Balls of golden, blue, and crimson flames flickered in the night sky like fireflies. Ji Tianqing frowned and observed carefully for a while. The corners of his mouth curled into a playful smile as he said, "Ha ha ha, looks like those guys haven't given up yet. They won't give up until they see the coffin. Yao Yao, let's go and meet them." While talking, he held the broken sword, the burial of heaven, and flew up to the sky above the cliff with Yun Yao. The two of them kept flying up. After flying for almost 100 miles, they finally left the abyss of the falling god cliff. When the two of them flew to the sky above the cliff, they saw more than 25 colored balls of true origin qi gathering around them. The dazzling light enveloped the figures of human martial artists. Ji Tianqing scanned the area with his soul spirit and found that the 26 warriors were all at the sky origin stage. 7 of them were at the 7th level of the sky origin stage. The other 19 were below the 7th level of the sky origin stage. These people were divided into 9 groups. They gathered in 2s and 3s, keeping a distance from each other. While they were on their guard, they kept looking down at the abyss below them. When Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao appeared, the gazes of the 26 heaven origin cultivators all gathered on the two of them. Everyone's nerves were taut as they stared at the two of them with gloomy eyes. Their eyes were filled with hostility and coldness. Many of the warriors even closed in on them, holding their swords and sabers as they approached the two of them. Ji Tianqing stepped into the sky, standing in the sea of clouds. He glanced around with disdain and said indifferently, I am in a good mood tonight. I don't want to kill anyone. Get out of my way if you know what's good for you. There was a trace of soul-spirit power in his voice. It was majestic and majestic, which frightened the souls of many of the warriors. The 26 Heavens Origin Stage cultivators all froze. Fear flashed through their eyes. However, everyone's desire and fantasy for divine tools and magical treasures surpassed their fear of Ji Tianqing. They were silent for a while. Then they plucked up their courage and approached Ji Tianqing with their swords and sabers. An old man with a goatee and a gray robe spoke. Kid, I am the vice president of the Association of Adventurers in Tiandang City. Everyone who enters Tiandang City to search for treasures has to get my permission. I don't want to say more. If you know what's good for you, hand over the treasures. The old man in the gray robe was the strongest among them. He was at Sky Origin Stage LV9. Of course, he had been stuck in this stage for over 100 years. He had not made any progress. If he did not have the help of a great opportunity or treasure, he would never be able to enter the soul cultivation stage. Therefore, he wanted the sacred artifact the most. He wanted it more than anyone else. Seeing Ji Tianqing's expressionless face, he added, Kid, don't try to fool me. The sacred artifact in the abyss must be in your hands. Ji Tianqing stared at him indifferently and said coldly, You ignorant idiots. Do you think the sacred artifact is as common as cabbages? It can be found everywhere. Easily at your fingertips. Chapter 12:12. Only Yunyao knew that when Ji Tianqing said that, he was ready to kill. However, the gray-robed old man and the 25 Heavens Origin experts did not take his words to heart. The gray-robed elder's skinny face sneered. He said in a chilling tone, Kid, you're too funny. You're still bluffing even now. Do you think we're all 3-year-olds? There are only 2 of you, and we have more than 20. No matter how strong you are, you're going to die here today. Cut the crap, hand over the divine artifact and Dharma treasure, and I can spare your dog life. The gray-robed elder was ready to kill as well. His body exuded a murderous aura, and the sword in his hand shone brightly. Since he had said that, Ji Tianqing did not want to waste any more time. Before he could finish, Ji Tianqing swung the broken sword in his hand and slashed out 6 beams of golden sword light that were over 30 meters long. They flew towards the gray-robed elder and the other experts. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The 6 beams of golden sword light pierced through the dark night sky and arrived before the gray-robed elder. The gray-robed elder and the other 4 divine origin experts were shocked. They swung their swords and sabers in a panic, using all sorts of secret techniques to block the golden sword light. Suddenly, the 5 of them swung their swords and sabers, releasing a dense array of sword light that lit up the sky above the abyss. Bang, bang, bang. The saber light and the sword light clashed, creating a series of muffled sounds that reverberated in the sky. A violent hurricane spread out, immediately blowing away the surrounding clouds and rolling up the dust and gravel. The attacks of the 5 Heaven Origin Stage cultivators were instantly shattered by the golden sword radiance and collapsed. The 5 of them were hit by the golden sword light. Blood and broken limbs splattered everywhere as they screamed in agony. The gray-robed elder had one of his legs cut off by the golden sword light. He was in so much pain that he was twitching all over. The other 4 divine origin experts had their limbs cut off as well. They were badly injured, and blood was pouring out of their bodies. This scene stunned everyone. Their eyes were filled with disbelief. No one had expected that Ji Tianqing's strength would actually be so formidable. However, the gray-robed elder endured the pain and roared in rage, What are you waiting for? Let's kill him together. You bunch of idiots. Are you going to watch him take the artifact away? The divine origin experts came back to their senses. Their fighting spirit was ignited by his words. They quickly swung their swords and weapons, unleashing all sorts of secret techniques to attack. Let's go together and kill that kid. There's so many of us. We don't have to be afraid of him. Even if he has 3 heads and 6 arms, he will die. Take the artifact away from us. In your dreams. As long as we get the artifact, it's worth it. The opportunity to soar is right in front of us. If you want to become a soul-refining cultivator, you have to rely on the artifact. Everyone was roaring with excitement. Their fighting spirit was soaring, and they unleashed an overwhelming amount of sword light, as well as a flood of flames. They attacked Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao with all their might. Yun Yao shouted coldly. She controlled the Star Dharma Eye and unleashed the ultimate move of the Star Sword technique, unleashing thousands of sword light. She waved the cold moon sword in her right hand and unleashed a moonlight blade towards the crowd. Ji Tianqing did not show any mercy. He waved the broken sword in his hand and unleashed 36 dazzling white light swords towards the crowd. The two parties engaged in a fierce battle in the air above the cliff. All sorts of colorful lights and shadows shrouded the sky within a 20-mile radius, illuminating the night sky. The raging energy dispersed the clouds and mist in the night sky, and the surrounding mountains were on the verge of collapsing from the impact. Boom! 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 The earth-shattering noises kept exploding in the night sky, spreading to hundreds of miles away. What a magnificent battle! However, the earth-shattering battle only lasted for 20 breaths of time before it was over. Ji Tianqing had only used 3 secret techniques, while Yun Yao had only used 4 sword techniques. More than 20 Heaven Origin stage experts had been killed. The first person to be killed was the gray-robed elder. His body was cut in half by several sword light. His head was separated from his body. His round head was thrown into the night sky and then fell off the cliff. The 4 Heaven Origin stage experts who were following him were also minced into pieces by the sword light. Not even a complete corpse was left behind. Other than that, 16 other Heaven Origin stage experts were killed on the spot. Their heads were separated from their bodies, and they died miserably. The remaining 5 experts were lucky enough to survive, but they were also covered in blood. Their arms and legs were broken, and their injuries were extremely serious. On the other hand, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao were not only unharmed, but also unscathed. They were also calm and composed, as if they had done it effortlessly. When the 5 lucky survivors saw this scene, they finally understood how powerful the 2 of them were. The 5 of them were scared out of their wits. Their fighting will and killing intent had melted like snow. Divine artifacts and Dharma treasures were indeed attractive and could make people dizzy and lose their minds. However, the threat of death was even more terrifying. They were scared out of their wits. Between divine artifacts and Dharma treasures, they chose to save their lives. Swish! 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 The 5 of them tried to run away at the fastest speed they had ever run in their lives, despite their serious injuries. However, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao used their capturing techniques and unleashed a gigantic palm of golden light and a gigantic palm of stars that blotted out the sky. They were immediately pulled back. Ji Tianqing caught 3 experts with the giant golden hands, and Yun Yao caught 2 with the giant hands of stars. The 5 experts were caught and brought back to the sky above the cliff. They were all struggling desperately, but it was useless. After struggling for a while, the 5 of them were filled with desperation and fear. 2 of them even cried and begged for mercy. Their postures were extremely humble. Young hero. No, sir, please have mercy on us. Please spare our lowly lives. We were blind and shouldn't have harbored evil thoughts. Ancestors, please take pity on us and let us live. In order to survive, the 2 tall middle-aged men begged for mercy in such a humble way. Seeing this, the other three experts also imitated them and begged for mercy. They called Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao their ancestors. Ji Tianqing's killing intent had been aroused, and he was prepared to kill them all with a single strike. However, seeing their pathetic appearance, the killing intent in his heart dissipated a lot. Yun Yao also couldn't bear it. She turned to look at him and asked through telepathy, "Tianqing, how should we deal with them?" Ji Tianqing frowned and thought for a while. He said, "Forget it. They were just possessed. We don't have any deep hatred for them. Let them live." "Okay," Yun Yao nodded quickly. She released the giant hands of stars and released the two Heaven Prime experts. Ji Tianqing also released the giant golden hands and threw the three experts onto the cliff. The five experts felt as if they had been pardoned. They knelt on the ground gratefully and kowtowed to the two of them. Chapter 12-13. It was deep into the night now. The night sky was gloomy. There were a few stars high up in the sky that shone brightly. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao flew through the night sky together as a streak of light. As they traveled, Yun Yao asked Ji Tianqing secretly, "Tianqing, we've already found the Godfall Cliff. There's no Neptunian pearl below it. Where do we go next? Do we continue searching for the Neptunian pearl?" Ji Tianqing nodded. He gazed towards the east and said calmly, "We don't have a lot of time left. The chances of finding the Neptunian pearl are very slim as well, so we can't waste time. Next, we need to go to the Eastern Sea's ruins and find the Sun-Moon furnace, and investigate the situation there." Yun Yao frowned in doubt. She asked with interest, "The Sun-Moon furnace? That sounds very profound. Tianqing, do you know about that forbidden ground?" "Yeah." Ji Tianqing nodded again and explained to her, "Before I went to the northern desert to save you, I went to the Eastern Sea's ruins end once and found the Sun-Moon furnace. That place is indeed a rare sight. Seawater flows into the sky, the sun sinks to the bottom of the sea, and the moon shines brightly." He explained the wonders of the Sun-Moon furnace to Yun Yao. Yun Yao was entranced. She imagined the corresponding scene in her head and found it unbelievable. However, when she calmed down and thought about it carefully, she felt that something was off. "Tianqing, you've already been to the Eastern Sea's ruins end and seen the Sun-Moon furnace, but you failed to sense the presence of the Neptunian pearl back then. Now that we've taken the risk to enter the Eastern Sea's ruins end, aren't we destined to return empty-handed?" Ji Tianqing shook his head and said sternly, "When I found the Sun-Moon furnace last time, I waited outside the entire time. I did not enter the furnace at the bottom of the sea, so I did not investigate the situation inside. That person told me that the Neptunian pearl might be hidden in the Sun-Moon furnace. I'd rather believe it and investigate it again. Moreover, the Neptunian pearl you fused with was found in the Eastern Sea's ruins end. I feel like if there's a second Neptunian divine pearl on the profound sky continent, it's probably in the Eastern Sea's end as well." After listening to his analysis, Yun Yao also felt that it was very reasonable, so she nodded in agreement. The two of them continued to fly towards the east. 10 days later, the two of them had been flying non-stop. They were mentally exhausted and had used up a lot of their magic power. Thus, when the two of them passed by a bustling city, they stopped to rest in the city. This city covered an area of 100 miles and had a population of nearly 1 million. The city was bustling with noise and excitement as cultivators from all over the world gathered here. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao entered the city together. They strolled around the city and replenished some spiritual stones, elixirs, and other resources before entering the inn to rest. The two of them kept a low profile. They were neither ostentatious nor vigilant. After all, this was just a city in the mortal world. There were no sects or powerful forces in the city. The commoners and martial artists in the city were all at the bottom of the social ladder, so they basically did not recognize geniuses like them. However, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao did not know that among the commoners and martial artists that they had ignored, there were actually a few people who were secretly following them. At night, the city quieted down. Those few martial artists hid around the inn and secretly observed. It was not until dawn that those few martial artists left quietly and used a secret technique to send out a message. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao meditated for the whole night. The next morning, when they had recovered their energy, they left the inn and continued their journey. The journey from the central continent to the East Sea was very long. If Ji Tianqing had traveled alone, he would only need 20 days to reach the Black Rock City by the East Sea. However, he had brought Yun Yao with him, so their speed would be slower. It would take at least a month for them to arrive. After 20 days, the two of them had traveled more than half of the journey and were getting closer and closer to the East Sea. That evening, the two of them temporarily stopped their journey and entered another city to rest. After they entered the city, they strolled around the city for a while before finding an inn to stay in. After nightfall, the two of them meditated in the inn and quickly recovered their magic power. In the darkness around the inn, a few sneaky figures appeared. They scattered and hid in the dark, observing silently. In the early morning, Ji Tianqing suddenly felt that something was wrong. He felt that it was a little strange, so he released his divine soul power to explore the surroundings. However, those few martial artists who were hiding in the dark seemed to be very vigilant. They all retreated silently. Ji Tianqing was more careful and was secretly on guard. However, those few martial artists did not appear again. Early the next morning, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao left the inn and continued their journey to the East Sea. In the next few days, everything was calm and peaceful. There were no twists and turns on the way. However, Ji Tianqing was still thinking about what happened before. He felt that something was wrong. He had a vague bad feeling. It was evening again, and he and Yun Yao were flying in the air above a vast forest. The setting sun hung in the sky and gradually fell toward the horizon. The golden sunlight shone on the clouds in the sky and sprinkled on the two of them. The two of them communicated via voice transmission as they hurried along. Ji Tianqing said to Yun Yao, "Yao Yao, we are already close to the East Sea coast. We are still 3 days away from Black Rock City. Divine General Donglin is overseeing Black Rock City. After we reach Black Rock City, we will rest there for a few days before heading to the East Sea's returning ruins." Yun Yao nodded and said in a gentle voice, "Tianqing, you have been to the East Sea's returning ruins. You are more familiar with the route here. We will follow your plan and arrangements. In the past half a month, I have also been comprehending and pondering a secret technique on the way. When we reach Black Rock City, I can cultivate in peace for a few days and strive to comprehend that secret technique as soon as possible." Ji Tianqing revealed a gratified smile as he nodded slightly and said, "The soul refinement realm is a realm that transcends the mortal martial Tao. After reaching this realm, your potential, talent, and comprehension will increase by leaps and bounds. Only then will you be able to gradually reveal your true talent. I believe that before long, you will be able to catch up to me or even surpass me." Yun Yao glanced at him and smiled faintly, "I know you want to encourage me, but that's not realistic. You are the greatest genius of the continent. No one can match your rate of growth." Ji Tianqing smiled in amusement. He said firmly, "That's right. If we both enter secluded cultivation, it might be very difficult for you to catch up to me. However, don't forget that once we find the second Neptunian divine pearl, you will transform once more. Your strength will skyrocket and your cultivation will skyrocket." A sliver of eagerness appeared in Yun Yao's eyes. She nodded, "I hope so." Before long, the sun had completely set and night descended. Heaven and earth turned dark. The vast sea of trees and the rolling mountains beneath their feet also became hazy and blurry. However, at this moment, a dazzling streak of light suddenly appeared in the night sky behind them. Chapter 12:14. When Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao discovered the white light, they were still 50 miles away from each other. Ji Tianqing turned his head to look at the white dragon-like shadow. He frowned and revealed a serious expression. With his keen observation skills, he could naturally see that there was a person in the white dragon-like shadow. It was a tall and sturdy middle-aged man with a dignified aura. He wore a purple robe. The purple-robed man's entire body lit up with the white light of the divine soul. He exuded a powerful aura. When he flew, he could control the power of heaven and earth. Without a doubt, he was an elite of the soul-tempering realm. Moreover, Ji Tianqing could feel that the purple-robed man's strength was only slightly weaker than Duanmu Peng's. After 2 breaths, the purple-robed man flew 40 miles away and arrived near Ji Tianqing and Yunyao. Swoosh! The purple-robed man stopped and stood proudly in the night sky 10 miles away from the two of them. The white light around his body gradually faded and revealed his true form. He stared coldly at Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing and Yunyao also stared at him and observed him carefully. Tianqing, who is this person? It seems that they have come with ill intentions and are quite hostile towards us. Yunyao's beautiful brows furrowed slightly as she secretly asked through voice transmission. Ji Tianqing's expression didn't change, but he secretly transmitted his voice. I don't know this guy either, but he looks a little familiar. Maybe he's here for me. This person's strength is around the 6th level of the soul-tempering realm. It's rare to see an elite of this level on the continent. Yunyao frowned and thought for a while. She said with a worried tone, Tianqing, this person's strength is on par with my father. In the Tianxian continent, an elite of this level can at least be ranked in the top 20. As long as he makes a move, he will expose his identity. It's not difficult for us to guess who he is. Ji Tianqing only nodded slightly and did not say anything. He stared coldly at the purple-robed man and was secretly on guard. He was silently accumulating magic power in his body, ready to attack at any time. Who are you? I don't know you. Why did you come here in the middle of the night? He asked with a cold expression, his tone low and dignified. The purple-robed man glared at him with eyes as sharp as swords. The corners of his mouth curled up into a sinister sneer. He said in a low and hoarse voice, Ji Tianqing, are you still playing dumb? Do you know that since you killed my son, I've been unable to eat or sleep in peace for over a year? Every time I close my eyes, would imagine the scene of me tearing you into pieces before burning your bones and scattering your ashes. I've waited for this day for over 460 days. Tonight, you will definitely die. I swear I will crush you into pieces and turn you into ashes. The purple-robed man's tone revealed extreme hatred and resentment. He gritted his teeth as if he wanted to skin Ji Tianqing alive and eat his flesh and drink his blood to vent his anger. Ji Tianqing and Yunyao were both startled. They looked at each other with a solemn expression. Obviously, both of them had guessed the purple-robed man's identity. You are, the master of the Murong family? Murong Zheng. It's you. The purple-robed man sneered and said in a low voice, he. Ji Tianqing, you're not too stupid. You've finally guessed my identity. That's right. I'm Murong Lingfeng's father, the master of the Murong family, Murong Zheng. Murong Zheng admitted his identity on the spot. As he spoke, he adjusted his purple robe and sleeves. His entire body emitted an earth-shattering domineering aura. He stared at Ji Tianqing like lightning and shouted angrily, little bastard, since you know my identity, you should know that you will definitely die. There's no luck. Surrender and I can only kill you and spare your wife, Yunyao. Otherwise, I don't mind killing both of you and making you a pair of lovebirds. Hearing Murong Zheng's words, Ji Tianqing couldn't help but sneer. He shouted coldly, Murong Zheng, since you've been hiding for more than a year, you must know that you can't kill me. You and I are both powerhouses of the human race. We're under the jurisdiction of the Imperial Court. I'm now the Tianshan Region Lord, the #1 genius of the human race. Do you dare to kill me? The Imperial Court will never spare you. Even the entire Murong family will be destroyed because of you. Ji Tianqing looked fearless. His words were filled with confidence. He sneered and said, "Even if you've been hiding for so long, you've tried to kill me in this desolate mountain. You thought that no one would know about this and that it wouldn't be exposed. However, after more than a year, I'm no longer who I used to be. You're no match for me at all." Seeing that he was so confident and arrogant, Murong shouted angrily, "Ji Tianqing. You're too arrogant. No matter how talented you are, you're only at the 3rd level of the spirit cultivation stage. It's easy for me to kill you personally. Killing you is as easy as killing a dog. Moreover, I've been hiding for more than a year. I've been carefully planning for a year. I've placed spies in all the cities of the continent to monitor your movements. I've spent so much effort and finally got this great opportunity. How can I let you go? Even if you talk a lot and bring up the imperial court, it's useless. I'll definitely kill you. Even the heavens won't be able to stop me." Murong Zheng's angry voice echoed in the night sky. It was so loud that even the deaf could hear it. Seeing that he was determined to kill, Ji Tianqing couldn't help but sneer, he. "Murong Zheng, I didn't plan to kill you. For the sake of the imperial court, I didn't want to kill the Murong family. I didn't think that you would hold on to this matter and send yourself to me. Since you want to die, I'll fulfill your wish. These nameless mountains, rivers, and forests will be the place where you, Murong Zheng, will be buried." Murong Zheng suddenly looked up to the sky and laughed. His tone was extremely sarcastic, "Ha. Little bastard, I'll let you know in a moment how ridiculous your arrogance is." As he spoke, he slowly raised his right hand and a ball of dark yellow light lit up in his palm. Whoosh! Within the ball of light, there were 4 flags of different colors that were spinning around. The 4 small flags were simple and exquisite. They emitted an aura of vicissitudes. It was obvious that they were top-level spirit treasures. This was the Murong family's heirloom, the 4 spirit saint flags. The flag was as black as ink. There was a divine turtle carved on it. It was the northern black tortoise. The flag was as red as fire. There was a divine beast carved on it. It was the southern vermilion bird. The dark green flag was carved with a lifelike azure dragon. It was made of the eastern first wood. The white flag was carved with a white tiger. It was made of the western 7th metal chi. It was an unparalleled killing weapon. Murong Zheng cast a spell with both hands and released a vast amount of magic power. He urged the 4 flags to fly into the sky. They flew 50 miles away and landed in the 4 directions. Suddenly, the 4 saint flags lit up with various colors and drew upon the power of heaven and earth. They formed a light barrier with a radius of 100 miles and sealed off this area. Chapter 12-15. When the 4 spirits' heaven sealing array was formed, the area within a 100-mile radius was shrouded in colorful light. The huge light shield was like a canopy in the sky. It was like an inverted bowl that suppressed Ji Tianqing and Yunyao. The array gathered the power of heaven and earth and suppressed Ji Tianqing and Yunyao invisibly. It increased the pressure on them and made it difficult for them to move. Even the circulation of their magic energy was obstructed and restricted, causing it to become extremely obstructed and difficult to move. The 4 spirits' sacred flag. Damn Murong Zheng. He actually used the Murong family's treasure. It seems like he's determined to kill me. Ji Tianqing murmured with a gloomy face. His eyes were very serious. At this moment, Murong Zheng took out a mid-grade soul-level ice blue sword and pointed it at him. He shouted angrily, "Ji Tianqing, it's time for you to die. Pay with your life for my son, Ling Feng." As soon as he finished speaking, he waved the ice blue sword and released a vast amount of magic power. He slashed out 3 huge swords that were 1,000 feet long and charged towards Ji Tianqing. Each of the huge swords was ice blue like a huge icicle. They emitted a bone-chilling aura that caused the air within a 10-mile radius to freeze. Ji Tianqing stared at the three huge swords with a serious face. A golden light flashed in his right palm and the broken sword, Burial of Heaven, appeared. Metal Emperor Slash. He did not dare to let his guard down when facing an experienced powerhouse like Morongjeng. He used an exquisite sword technique as soon as he made his move. The huge golden sword that was 1,000 feet long slashed towards the three ice-blue swords with an indestructible power. Bam! In a deafening sound, the swords collided with each other and exploded into fragments of light that filled the sky. It created a violent and terrifying shockwave. Only one of the three ice-blue swords was broken. The remaining two continued to slash towards Ji Tianqing. The two giant ice-blue swords were about to strike Ji Tianqing from the left and right. At this critical moment, he quickly shook the golden cape behind him and turned it into a pair of golden wings to protect himself. Bang bang! The two giant ice-blue swords slashed at the golden wings with a loud bang, but they shattered into ice fragments that filled the sky. Ji Tianqing was not injured at all. He spread his golden wings and was about to brandish his broken sword to counterattack Morongjeng. At this moment, a white light suddenly appeared in the night sky 1,000 meters away from him and Yunyao. It was a dazzling white sword aura that silently appeared behind him, stabbing towards him at a speed faster than the speed of light. Ji Tianqing only stared at Morongjeng and focused all his attention on him. He did not expect that there was someone else hiding behind him. By the time he sensed that something was amiss and discovered that there was a soul refinement realm expert hiding in the middle of the battlefield, it was already too late. Morongjeng was crazily attacking from the front, and a mysterious expert was trying to assassinate him from behind. He was attacked from both front and back, his blood would splatter everywhere. Even if he didn't die, he would be seriously injured. At this critical moment, Yunyao, who had been guarding by his side, stepped forward without hesitation and blocked his back with her sword. Moonblade Skystrike. Yunyao didn't think too much about it. She just wanted to help Ji Tianqing block the sneak attack of the strong enemy. She didn't want to see Ji Tianqing get injured, so she didn't care about her own safety at all. Bang! That dazzling sword light collided with Yun Yao's moonlight blade with a loud bang, exploding with a muffled sound. The silver moonblade collapsed on the spot. The dazzling white sword aura pierced through the silver light fragments and stabbed Yun Yao. Puff! The incomparably sharp sword light pierced through her left shoulder, almost chopping off her left arm at the root. Bright red blood suddenly splashed out and bloomed in the night sky. It was mournful and dazzling. Yun Yao was seriously injured. She immediately opened her mouth and spat out a stream of blood. She couldn't help but fly backward. Ji Tianqing had just blocked Morongjeng's strong attack. He turned his head and saw Yun Yao flying out with blood all over her body. He immediately roared in anger. No! At that moment, his heart was in his throat and his nerves were tense. He was so angry that the top of his head was numb and his eyes were bloodshot. His unparalleled anger and killing intent turned his eyes dark red as if he was possessed by the devil. Swoosh! He rushed out in a flash and held Yun Yao in his arms. He checked her injuries worriedly. He saw that the left side of Yun Yao's body was badly mutilated. Her white clothes and skirt were dyed red with blood. Her face was pale and her forehead was covered in cold sweat. She was also a little tired. However, she gritted her teeth and endured her injuries. She didn't even scream in pain. She even shook her head at Ji Tianqing, indicating that he didn't need to worry. Tianqing. Don't worry about me. I'm fine. Be careful. There's another sneak attack. Ji Tianqing originally wanted to transfer some of his power to her to help her heal her injuries. However, Morongjeng laughed complacently as he brandished his sword and charged over again. The mysterious powerhouse hiding in the dark released a few cold lights again and attacked him viciously. The situation was critical. Ji Tianqing didn't have time to think or hesitate. He made a prompt decision to open the sword world and put Yunyao inside. He let her heal in Anshui City. At the same time, he summoned the Golden Mountain King to help him fight. The Golden Mountain King was eager to fight. He rushed out of the sword world and rushed toward the mysterious powerhouse hiding in the dark with his dark golden hammer. Ji Tianqing fought Murongzheng with all his strength. He waved his broken sword and used his secret technique to fight with him in the night sky. Murongzheng used his secret technique and released 9 ice-blue dragons that were thousands of feet long. They came crashing down with the power to destroy heaven and earth. Ji Tianqing faced his secret technique head-on. He pulled out his broken sword and slashed with his strongest power. Draw your sword. An unparalleled sharp and extremely fast sword projection of 1,000 feet instantly pierced through the night sky and struck the neck of one of the ice-blue dragons. Bam! With a muffled sound, the ice-blue dragon was cut in half by the sword light and shattered into pieces. Then, the power of the white sword light didn't decrease at all. It cut the second ice-blue dragon in half. Murongzheng realized that something was wrong. His pupils contracted. He was very afraid of the power of this sword technique. Just as he was about to dodge, the white sword light was already in front of him and hit him. Kaboom! With a loud sound, his protective Dharma power was shattered by the sword light. He was sent flying. Even though he was wearing a low-grade soul-level armor, the blazing white sword light still managed to leave a crack on his armor. The purple robe on his chest and abdomen was torn. A long and narrow wound appeared. Dark red blood kept flowing out. The terrifying force of impact pushed him back 1,000 meters before he finally managed to neutralize the force and stop his retreat. At the same time, Ji Tianqing used the sword soul battle technique. His body flashed across the night sky like a ghost. He passed through the ice-blue dragons and rushed in front of him. Murongzheng! You damned old man! How dare you ask other powerhouses to help you kill me? You cowardly beast! What truly angered Ji Tianqing was not Murongzheng's attempt to kill him. It was Murongzheng who found help and injured Yunyao with a sneak attack. Chapter 12-16. When the mysterious elite appeared, Ji Tianqing understood everything. For more than a year, Murongzheng appeared to be holding back, but in fact, he was secretly plotting to avenge Muronglingfeng. Murongzheng was placing spies in various cities in the mainland, using the Murong family's powerful intelligence network to monitor his whereabouts and movements. Moreover, Murongzheng even found a mysterious elite to help him. He finally took action when he was fully confident. However, Murongzheng was not ashamed. Instead, he was proud of it. Ji Tianqing did not want to waste any more time with him. He waved the broken sword with all his might and stabbed at Murongzheng. Murongzheng, you old bastard, die. Whoosh! A cold light suddenly appeared, carrying with it the power to destroy everything. It instantly traversed 1,000 meters in the sky and arrived in front of Murongzheng. Murongzheng did not expect that Ji Tianqing's swordsmanship had reached such a marvelous level. It was simply superb and unbelievable. Damn it! I've actually underestimated you. At the critical moment, he shouted angrily and immediately used the power of the 4 holy flags to teleport 10 miles to the left. Swoosh! With a flash of light, Murongzheng moved 5 kilometers away, narrowly dodging this sword attack. The sword radiance, which had been condensed to the extreme, traversed dozens of miles in the night sky and stabbed into a huge mountain, exploding in an instant. Boom! Following an earth-shattering explosion, the mountain was blasted into pieces on the spot, turning into endless gravel and dust that splashed out in all directions. The dazzling white sword radiance also exploded like a mushroom cloud. It was even more dazzling than the sun. The night sky within a radius of dozens of miles was illuminated by the white light. The huge mountain disappeared into thin air, leaving only a deep pit in its original place. With the huge mountain as the center, within a radius of 30 miles, the ground cracked open. The mountain shook and a huge crack appeared. Seeing this scene, Murong Zheng's pupils constricted. His face became serious, and his eyes were filled with shock. After seeing the power of the sword, he was very glad that he had dodged it. If it were not for the power of the 4 holy flags, he would have been stabbed by the sword. Even if he did not die, he would be seriously injured. Murong, you old thief. Don't even think about escaping. Hand over your life. Ji Tianqing's sword missed, but he was not discouraged. He brandished his broken sword again and attacked Murong Zheng. Murong Zheng saw that he had gone mad and his murderous aura was soaring to the heavens, so he didn't dare to fight him head-on. He hurriedly dodged. He controlled the power of the 4 Spirit Saint flag and used the power of the domain to constantly teleport, flashing in and out of the night sky, making it impossible for Ji Tianqing to touch him. On the other hand, Ji Tianqing was suppressed by the power of the invisible domain. His speed became slower and slower, and his mana consumption became more and more intense. Ji Tianqing was filled with rage. His heart was filled with murderous intent, but he couldn't release it. He repeatedly cursed Murong Zheng as an old turtle. As Murong Zheng's situation became safer and safer, he laughed even more proudly. Ha ha ha. Ji Tianqing, no matter how talented you are, you can't do anything to me. You are destined to be buried here. You will die young and pay for my son, Ling Feng. Ji Tianqing's face was cold as he shouted angrily, dream on. Old man, not only will I kill your son, I will also kill you and destroy your Murong family. Just wait and see. After I kill you, I will exterminate all the descendants of the Murong family. As he spoke, he desperately flew back and forth, chasing after Murong Zheng. Murong Zheng was not in a hurry to fight him head-on. He kept flying back and forth in the domain, fighting with him and stalling for time. His purpose was obvious. He wanted to wait for the mysterious expert to kill the Golden Mountain King, then join forces with him to kill Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing saw through his intention, so he went to check on the Golden Mountain King. He saw that the Golden Mountain King had already entered the ground and was chasing after a middle-aged man in a black robe. The Golden Mountain King was from the Earth Spirit clan. Fighting in the underground rock layer was very advantageous for him. Logically speaking, he should have the upper hand in the underground battle because he was more proficient in the underground battle. However, the truth was the opposite. The black-robed man's strength had reached LV5 soul cultivation realm. Moreover, the black-robed man was also good at escaping into the ground and assassinating. He was like a fish in water when fighting underground. After dozens of moves, the black-robed man obviously had the upper hand. He was forcing the Golden Mountain King to retreat and his injuries were getting worse. As time passed, the golden armor that the Golden Mountain King was wearing cracked. His body was covered with wounds and blood was flowing out. His strength was getting weaker and weaker. He could no longer take the initiative to attack and could only defend himself. At most, he would be severely injured or even killed by the black-robed man in 100 breaths' time. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing frowned and weighed the pros and cons. He temporarily gave up on Murong Zheng and turned around to dive into the underground. He wanted to join forces with the Golden Mountain King to kill the mysterious expert in the black robe first, then deal with Murong Zheng. However, just as he was about to turn around and leave, Murong Zheng took the opportunity to use his unique skill and rushed toward him. Heavenly Wind Slash. Murong Zheng shouted angrily and waved his ice-blue treasure sword. Borrowing the strength of the wind, he slashed out tens of thousands of icy sword radiances. Swoosh! 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 Tens of thousands of icy blue giant swords formed a 10,000-meter-tall tornado and swept toward Ji Tianqing. After the powerful tornado enveloped Ji Tianqing, it crazily strangled him, wanting to crush him into pieces. He quickly spread his golden wings to protect himself. Tens of thousands of icy blue sword radiances slashed at the golden wings and made ear-piercing sounds of friction. However, the golden wings were still safe and sound. There was not even a crack on them. After 10 breaths' time, the tornado that covered the sky gradually dissipated. Ji Tianqing's figure appeared and he was still unharmed. Murongzheng, you old bastard. After I kill that bastard, I will kill you later. Ji Tianqing cursed angrily and flew toward the Golden Mountain King again. Murongzheng would not let him do as he wished. He sneered and waved his ice-blue treasure sword again and charged toward Murongzheng. Heavenly Frost Ice Dragon Break. Murongzheng shouted and the ice-blue treasure sword in his hands turned into a 1,000-meter giant sword and slashed toward Ji Tianqing from the sky. He had thought that Ji Tianqing would not have time to worry about him as he was in a hurry to save the Golden Mountain King. Even if this earth-shattering slash could not severely injure Ji Tianqing, it could at least injure him. More importantly, this slash could slow him down and prevent him from saving the Golden Mountain King. However, Murongzheng did not expect that Ji Tianqing was lying to him. When he held his ice-blue treasure sword and slashed toward Ji Tianqing suddenly turned around and looked at him with a cold smile. Old bastard, you are really in a hurry to die. Ji Tianqing was obviously prepared and had a plan in mind. He grinned coldly and waved his sword to attack Yi Shiwen. He ignored the ice-blue treasure sword that was descending from the sky and used his piercing sword technique to stab toward Murongzheng. Chapter 12-17. Whoosh! A cold light suddenly appeared and immediately bloomed with a bang, illuminating the sky. The cold light directly pierced through Murongzheng's abdomen and suddenly exploded inside his body. Bang! In the deafening loud noise, a dazzling white light bloomed, illuminating the night sky. His body was covered by the white light, making it impossible to see his appearance clearly. Only his shrill scream could be heard. Ah! The white light wave covered a radius of 20 miles and gradually dissipated after a few breaths. The loud noise also gradually stopped and the night sky gradually returned to normal. They saw that Murongzheng had fallen from the sky and was lying in the forest below. A large hole was smashed in the dense forest. The surrounding trees were all knocked to the ground by the shock wave, their branches and leaves broken into pieces. Murongzheng, who had been majestic just a moment ago, was now only left with half of his body. Everything below his waist had disappeared. Looking around, there were only drops of blood and minced meat on the ground. Not even a complete bone could be found. The power of this sword was actually so terrifying. Murongzheng, who only had half of his body left, was lying in the large hole covered in blood. He was still twitching in pain and screaming. His long hair was disheveled and covered in blood and mud. His hands and chest were also badly mutilated, and blood was constantly flowing out of them. However, even though he was severely injured and looked extremely miserable, he would not die. The power of his soul was still strong. He endured the heart-wrenching pain and stretched out his blood-stained hands. He grabbed the mud and the edge of the large hole and slowly climbed out. Ji Tianqing flew down from the sky and stood above the crater. He looked down at Murongzheng from above and said expressionlessly, "Murongzheng, your plan has failed. Now, the person who is going to die is you. Go to hell." With that, he waved his broken sword and slashed out a soul sword radiance towards Murongzheng in the large hole. Murongzheng's injuries were too serious. He used his magic power to escape from the deep hole, but he could not avoid this sword. He was about to be killed by Ji Tianqing's sword. At this critical moment, there was a dazzling white sword radiance diagonally behind him. It was as fast as lightning. Boom! This 30-meter-long sword light blocked Ji Tianqing's sword, and a muffled sound rang out. The two sword lights exploded at the same time, exploding into fragments that scattered in all directions. Soon after, a black figure flew over and lifted Morongjeng out of the deep pit with his big hand. Ji Tianqing took a closer look and saw that it was the black-robed man, Morongjeng's accomplice. This person's body was thin, and his face was long and narrow and yellow. He had a goatee on his chin, and his eyes were long and narrow and deep. At a glance, one could tell that he was not a good person. Ji Tianqing memorized this person's appearance, but he felt that it was very unfamiliar. He couldn't help but ask, "Who are you? Why are you helping Morongjeng? Why are you helping him?" The black-robed man looked at him from the corner of his eyes. His eyes were cold as he sneered and said in a mocking tone, "Helping the tyrant? Brat, the one who should die is you. A life for a life, a debt must be paid with money. You killed my nephew Ling Feng, so you should be executed. Murong Ling Feng is your nephew?" Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and asked doubtfully, "Could it be that you are Morongjeng's brother, a member of the Murong family?" "Of course not." The black-robed man subconsciously denied. While he was dawdling with Ji Tianqing, he injected magic power into Morongjeng and fed him a soul-level elixir to help him suppress his injuries. "Brat, we all misjudged you. I didn't expect that you, a mere level 3 soul cultivation stage cultivator, could injure senior brother Murong. However, don't be happy too early. I'm afraid that your shorty companion won't be able to survive." The black-robed man glanced at the ruins in the distance and sneered at Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing quickly released his soul strength and looked at the ruins 20 miles away. He saw that in the deep pit of the ruins, the Golden Mountain King was lying in the mud, covered in blood. His body was trembling and twitching. The golden armor he was wearing was completely shattered and turned into a pile of broken copper and iron pieces. The dark gold war hammer fell to the side and its light dimmed. His body was covered with dozens of wounds, all of which were so deep that his bones could be seen. It was even to the extent that his left arm and right leg had been blasted into pieces. The real fatal wound was on his neck. The sword had cut open his blood vessels and almost beheaded him. Fortunately, the Golden Mountain King was a soul cultivation stage cultivator. If he was a Heaven's Origin stage cultivator, he would have died on the spot. Seeing the Golden Mountain King's miserable injuries, Ji Tianqing frowned and his eyes and expression became gloomy. He stared at the black-robed man and shouted angrily, "You bastard! You are so cruel! I will never let you go." The black-robed man was not angry. He slowly retreated with Morongjeng. He even sneered and said, "He. Everyone is the same. If you don't want your partner to die, then don't waste your time here." Ji Tianqing frowned and looked at the black-robed man. He knew that the black-robed man was plotting something. He might run away with Morongjeng when he went to save the Golden Mountain King. However, even if he knew the black-robed man's intention, he could not leave him in the lurch. The Golden Mountain King was in a critical condition. If he did not receive treatment soon, his body would be completely destroyed. By then, even if the Golden Mountain King survived, he would have to go into seclusion for 100 years to recover his body. Thinking of this, Ji Tianqing turned around and flew toward the Golden Mountain King without hesitation. Sure enough, when he turned around and flew away, the black-robed man immediately took Morongjeng and fled into the night sky. "Senior brother Murong, this man's strength is too terrifying. We should retreat." Morongjeng's injuries were temporarily suppressed and his broken waist was no longer bleeding. However, when he heard the black-robed man's words, he shouted unwillingly, "No. Junior brother Ji, I have been planning for a year and finally got this chance to kill Ji Tianqing. Once I miss this chance, it will be difficult to kill him in the future. He is very cunning and will not give me a second chance." The black-robed man with the surname Ji said in a serious tone, "Senior brother Murong, I understand how you feel. I also want to kill that man to avenge my nephew Lingfeng. However, you are already injured. Even you are no match for him. What can I do to him? If this drags on, I am afraid both of us will be in trouble. This is not a wise move. Murongzheng extended his hand to wipe the blood off his face. His lips curled into a sinister smile as he took out a dark golden metal ball from his space ring. He. Junior brother Ji, you have underestimated me. Even if I am seriously injured by that little bastard, I still have the four spirits' sacred flag and this magic treasure. After Master passed this magic treasure to me, I have not used it for 100 years. Today, I can finally put it to good use. The black-robed man stared at the metal ball for a moment. Suddenly, his expression changed drastically. His eyes widened as he shouted, "This is Xuanya Golden Embryo. Master actually passed it on to you." Chapter 12:18. The soul-tempering realm was a watershed in martial arts. Below the soul-tempering realm, even the Sky Origin realm experts were limited to the mortal world. Their strength and power were limited. However, once they entered the soul-tempering realm, they would surpass the limits of the mortal world. Martial artists would have all kinds of incredible abilities. For example, they could live for 1,000 years, and their soul would not die even if their physical body was destroyed. The doppelganger technique was also one of the martial arts techniques. There were two types, the soul doppelganger and the doppelganger. The soul doppelganger was easy to understand. It was a doppelganger formed by the power of the soul. However, this doppelganger was only an illusion and not a physical body. Although it had all kinds of magical uses, it also had its corresponding flaws and shortcomings. The doppelganger technique was similar to the puppet technique. It required a strong body to contain the soul of the martial artist. The thing that was refined into an avatar could be a corpse, a demonic beast, or even some kind of magic treasure. The Xuanya golden embryo in Murong Zheng's hand was a human body. It was a top magical treasure refined by his master. He activated his magic power and poured it into the Xuanya golden embryo. The golden embryo suddenly shone with a dazzling golden light. It immediately expanded and turned into a body. This body was tall and sturdy. It was wearing a golden armor. Its figure, appearance, and eyes were exactly the same as Murong Zheng's. This was the magic of the Xuanya golden embryo. Murong Zheng refined it with his soul for a long time and it could turn into Murong Zheng's appearance. If the black-robed man obtained this item and refined it with his soul for a long time, the Xuanya golden embryo's body would be no different from his. Of course, this doppelganger technique was just a puppet. It did not have a life or soul. Therefore, it only had Murong Zheng's appearance, but it did not have Murong Zheng's temperament and soul aura. Murong Zheng controlled the white light of his soul. It flew out from the top of his head and entered the Xuanya golden embryo. The Xuanya golden embryo suddenly came to life. Its facial expression changed slightly. Its eyes became lively and its body emitted the domineering aura of a soul-tempering realm expert. Murong Zheng twisted his neck and moved his arms and legs. Soon, he got used to the doppelganger technique. Ji Tianqing stored half of his body into his interspatial ring and smiled at the black-robed man. "Junior brother Ji, do you still think that we can't kill Ji Tianqing?" The black-robed man looked at him with a complicated expression. Looking at his golden armor and his majestic appearance, he said enviously, "Senior brother Murong, master really favors you a lot." This external avatar was refined from star true gold and had the ability to transform into a myriad of things. Its defensive power was also unparalleled. With this magic treasure in hand, even if your physical body is destroyed, your divine soul can immediately transfer into your external incarnation and immediately recover your combat strength. This is simply too heaven-defying. Ha ha ha. That's why I've already said that Ji Tianqing will definitely die tonight. There's no way he'll be able to escape. Murong sneered proudly. He held the ice-blue treasure sword in his hand and stared coldly into the distant night sky. At the same time, Ji Tianqing had already rescued the Jinshan king. He used the ultimate skill of the Wood Emperor umbrella to inject green wood genuine qi and vitality into the Jinshan king. The wounds all over the Jinshan king's body healed at a speed visible to the naked eye, and no more blood flowed out. Ji Tianqing gave him 2 healing elixirs and circulated his energy to help him suppress his injuries. The Jinshan king gradually regained consciousness and said in a weak voice, "Young Master Ji, I've disappointed you. I'm too useless. Not only did I not help you, I even dragged you down." Ji Tianqing shook his head and said solemnly, "Jinshan king, there's no need to be so polite between us. You don't have to blame yourself either. You've already done enough. You can only blame your opponents for being too strong and too despicable. Don't worry and return to the peaceful Earth City to recuperate. I'll take care of those 2 bastards and avenge you." The Jinshan king nodded and said with concern, "Young Master Ji, you must be careful. Take care." Ji Tianqing did not say anything else. He opened the sword world and sent the Jinshan king back to the peaceful Earth City. Then, he carried the broken sword Burial of Heaven and flew toward Murong and the black-robed man. Swoosh! He flew across the night sky expressionlessly, emitting a cold killing intent. In the blink of an eye, he arrived above a mountain peak. He stood in the night sky 5 kilometers away from Murong, coldly looking at him and the black-robed man. Seeing Murong body return to its original state and wearing a layer of golden armor, he immediately trembled and frowned in confusion. Murong, that old bastard, his body was clearly destroyed by my sword and only half of his body was left. How did he recover in the blink of an eye? This is impossible. What kind of secret technique in this world can regenerate a person's body in the blink of an eye? Ji Tianqing was shocked and could not believe it. At this moment, the Burial of Heaven's vigorous voice rang in his mind, reminding him, "Tianqing, there is indeed a secret technique in this world that can quickly regenerate a person's body, but that's a Saint Realm secret technique. It's impossible for it to appear on this continent. It's impossible for Murong to master this kind of Saint Realm secret technique. The person you saw was not his original body, but a puppet." The Burial of Heaven was knowledgeable and knowledgeable. Of course, he could see Murong abnormality at a glance. Ji Tianqing stared at Murong and observed him for a moment. He thought to himself doubtfully, "Buried heaven, what kind of puppet could be so lifelike and even possess Murong god soul aura?" The Burial of Heaven was silent for a moment, as if it was investigating Murong situation. After a moment, it explained, "Murong body is very similar to a puppet's, but it's also not. That's an external incarnation, a very rare clone technique." External clone. Cloning technique. Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and revealed a look of interest. The Burial of Heaven said in a deep voice, "Now is not the time to discuss this. When you are strong enough, I will naturally teach you the cloning technique." "All right." Ji Tianqing nodded and said with a murderous aura, "We'll talk about this later. Right now, I need to kill those 2 bastards." As he said that, he held the broken sword, the Burial of Heaven, and rushed toward Murong at the speed of light. "Murong old man. Even if you change into a dog's skin, I will still kill you. Heaven-splitting sword. Die." Amidst his angry roar, Ji Tianqing held the broken sword with both hands and slashed with all his strength. 1,000 feet long blazing white sword light, carrying the power and momentum of splitting heaven and earth, fell from the sky and slashed toward Murong. This sword was the combination of essence, energy, and spirit, heaven, man, and sword. This was the sword that Ji Tianqing poured his magic power, spirit, and soul into. It was the strongest and most powerful sword. Just like his determination and attitude in martial arts, he pressed forward courageously and cut through all obstacles. No matter how difficult or dangerous it was, he would slash through with one sword. The sword light that could split heaven and earth had locked onto Murong Zheng's soul aura, leaving him with nowhere to hide. Murong Zheng's expression changed and his eyes became serious. He could only use a secret technique to remove the domain that covered 100 miles and call back the four spirits' holy flag. Swoosh 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 swoosh. Chapter 12-19. Ji Tianqing was very clear that the four-spirit saint flag was a soul-level high-level magic treasure. Its defense was very strong. His one sword splitting the heavens' consummate skill was naturally incomparably valiant and invincible. But he could not guarantee that after this sword was blocked by the four-spirit saint flag, it could still kill Murong Zheng. That was not realistic. The biggest possibility was that the four-spirit saint flag would be knocked away or injured while Murong Zheng would be safe and sound. At most, he would only be lightly injured. When this thought flashed through Ji Tianqing's mind, he did not hesitate to change his target and fiercely slashed at the black-robed man. Murong Zheng was stronger, and with the four-spirit saint flag protecting him, it would not be easy to kill him. But the black-robed man was weaker. Ji Tianqing decided to kill him first and then deal with Murong Zheng. The black-robed man stood not far from Murong Zheng. He held a treasured sword in his hand and was supporting Murong Zheng. He originally thought that while Ji Tianqing and Murong Zheng were fighting, he would help from the side and use a secret assassination technique. After all, he came from the Heaven Ascension sect and was best at hiding and assassination techniques. But he never thought that Ji Tianqing's sword, just as it was about to hit Murong Zheng, would suddenly slash at him. At that moment, his expression changed greatly. His eyes were filled with fear and he cursed in his heart, "What the fuck? I have no enmity with you. You don't want to kill Murong Zheng, but you want to kill me first." The black-robed man was so depressed that he wanted to vomit blood. He could only run for his life without any strength to resist. His name was Ji Wuxia. It was a name given to him by his master. But now, there was nothing he could do. Bang! With a deafening sound, the heaven-splitting sword fiercely slashed at the panicked Ji Wuxia. Violent waves of air formed a white shockwave that spread out in all directions. In an instant, it covered a radius of 50 miles. Murong Zheng, who was the closest, was sent flying 10 miles away on the spot. Half the sky was lit up by the white light. The night was as bright as day. The power of this sword was earth-shattering. It was incomparably terrifying. Ji Wuxia's figure was engulfed by the white light. He didn't even have the chance to scream before he melted like snow. His body disintegrated. The armor he wore, as well as the sole weapon in his hand, were all shattered by the sword. After his physical body was crushed into powder, his divine soul was also injured by the power of the giant sword, causing cracks to appear on it. A moment later, when the white light that blotted out the sky dissipated and the night sky returned to darkness, the remaining power of the sword dissipated. A white light flew into the night sky with a swoosh sound, and fled into the distance. That was Ji Wuxia's divine soul. He wasn't as lucky as Murong Zheng to have the Xuanye golden embryo as an avatar. His physical body was destroyed, and his soul had nowhere to go, so he could only flee in panic. At this moment, he couldn't care less about the friendship between fellow disciples. He didn't even dare to think about killing Ji Tianqing to avenge Murong Lingfeng. He only wanted to escape and leave this place as quickly as possible. Preserving his life was more important. However, Ji Tianqing wanted to take advantage of his victory to pursue and attack. He tore through the night sky as fast as an aurora, brandishing his sword and chasing after him. Trying to escape. Prepare to die. He shouted coldly and swung his broken sword, sending out a shocking sword light towards Ji Wuxia's divine soul. However, Murong Zheng had already rushed over and controlled the four sacred flags to block in front of him. Heaven and earth Dharma image, for spirits suppressing the heavens. Murongjeng shouted angrily and controlled the 4 sacred flags to fly and revolve, forming a huge light screen in the night sky, blocking Ji Tianqing like a barrier. Ping! The blazing white sword light slashed onto the 5-colored barrier and exploded with a loud sound, but it immediately shattered. That 5-colored barrier also trembled uncontrollably and cracks appeared on it, but it quickly dissipated. Ji Tianqing's charge was blocked and he was immediately held back by Murongjeng. It was impossible for him to chase after Ji Wuxia. Ji Wuxia's divine soul escaped 10 miles away, but he didn't forget to send a message to Murongjeng with his divine soul, "Senior Murong, this bastard is very strong. I will leave first. Don't force yourself. If you can't defeat him, you must retreat. I will return to Sun Tian's sect now and ask for reinforcements to help you." After saying that, Ji Wuxia didn't wait for Murongjeng's reply and flew away hurriedly. After a few breaths, the white light of his divine soul disappeared into the horizon and was swallowed by the dark night sky. In the vast mountains and forests, only Ji Tianqing and Murongjeng were left. They were still entangled with each other. Both of them used their full strength and only wanted to kill each other as soon as possible. Sword light and sword shadows intersected and clashed in the night sky, causing loud explosions. As Murongjeng fought with Ji Tianqing, he pondered, Ji Wuxia is still as cowardly as before. He has no backbone. This brat only knows how to launch sneak attacks from the dark and doesn't have the courage to fight head-on. He also doesn't have the responsibility and dignity of an expert. Because of this, Master doesn't value him and passed the Xuanye golden embryo to me. Wait for him to return to Sun Tian's sect to ask for reinforcements. In less than 2 hours, I will definitely be able to cut off Ji Tianqing's head with my sword. At the same time, Ji Tianqing frowned and thought to himself with a gloomy face, Murongjeng's 4-spirit saint flag is indeed worthy of being a family heirloom. Its defense is so strong. Unless I fight in close combat, I can only use my broken sword to break through the defense of the 4-spirit saint flag. Otherwise, it is almost impossible for me to break through the defense of the 4-spirit saint flag with my secret martial arts. Murongjeng also knows this, so he has always been on guard against me. He doesn't want to fight me in close combat. No, I have to create an opportunity. Ji Tianqing made up his mind and purposely revealed an opening to attract Murongjeng's attack. While Murongjeng was attacking fiercely, he quickly used the sword spirit battle technique and used his godlike body movement to dodge the sword light in the sky and rushed in front of Murongjeng. Old man, die. Ji Tianqing suddenly appeared 1,000 meters behind Murongjeng. With a shout, he swung his sword fiercely. Draw your sword. The broken sword slashed out a ray of blazing white sword light and instantly cut through the night sky and hit Murongjeng. Murongjeng did not have time to dodge and was sent flying by this sword. A wound that was more than a foot long and 2 inches deep immediately appeared on his left shoulder. This sword almost cut off his entire left arm. However, there was no blood flowing out from the wound and no bones could be seen. After Murongjeng flew 1,000 meters away, his whole body flashed with a golden light and he immediately used his magic power to heal the wound on his left shoulder. In a blink of an eye, the wound was healed. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing frowned and his expression was a little ugly. Murongjeng was full of pride and he sneered, "He. Little bastard, are you stunned? You haven't seen such a miraculous self-healing ability, right? As the family head of an ancient family, the resources and treasures that I have is something that you can't even imagine. You can't beat me, accept your fate and accept your death." Ji Tianqing stared at him coldly and his lips curled into a cold smile. He said in a playful tone, "Isn't it just a puppet incarnation? What's so great about it? Do you really think that I can't kill you? Then open your dog eyes wide and look carefully." As he said that, he raised his heavy left arm and the flame mark on the back of his hand lit up with a sacred golden light. Chapter 12:20. Following Ji Tianqing's low growl, a dazzling golden flame gushed out of his palm. Swoosh! The dazzling holy flame instantly formed a golden spear that was 10 meters long and as thick as a man's arm. This spear was simple and exquisite in design. It exuded a violent aura that could destroy heaven and earth, as if it was a divine weapon held by a deity from the 9 heavens. Swish! In just 1/3 of an instant, the god-slaying spear turned into a golden ray of light. It pierced through the sky and arrived in front of Murongzheng. Murongzheng's divine soul was locked onto by the god-slaying spear. He had nowhere to run. No matter where he ran to, the god-slaying spear would hit him. Therefore, he chose to face it head-on. He manipulated the 4 sacred flags to form a defensive array to protect himself. Boom! When the 4 spirit saint flags shone with a dazzling brilliance and condensed into a colorful shield, the god-slaying spear struck the shield with a loud bang. At that moment, the heaven and earth within a radius of 15 kilometers became still. The air was also squeezed. The space seemed to be frozen. Even time stopped flowing. Murongzheng watched helplessly as a huge hole appeared in the dazzling shield, which had an unparalleled defensive power. Dense cracks spread out around the gap, and then the entire shield exploded with a bang, exploding into fragments all over the sky. The 4 sacred flags were blown away and fell in 4 different directions. The lights flashed wildly for a while and then dimmed. Almost at the same time, the god-slaying spear's power did not decrease and hit him. There was another loud bang. Murongzheng was drowned in the holy golden light. He did not even have time to scream before his chest was pierced by the god-slaying spear. His body exploded into millions of golden pieces and splashed in all directions. His external incarnation was a soul-level upper-grade Dharma treasure that was made from the extremely precious stellar true gold. However, this god-slaying spear was released by Ji Tianqing with all his strength. It consumed 30% of the power of the divine flames. Its power was enough to destroy heaven and earth. The deafening sound continued to reverberate in the sky. The golden pieces that were flying in the sky were like golden snowflakes falling in the night sky. It was very dazzling. Murongzheng's external incarnation was destroyed on the spot. His divine soul was also blown away. It fell into the distance in a daze. Even though he was lucky enough to not die, cracks had appeared on his soul and he had suffered severe injuries. If he could escape, he would have to recuperate in seclusion for more than 10 years to recover from the injury to his divine soul. Without a doubt, he had been utterly defeated, utterly defeated. Swoosh! At this moment, Ji Tianqing's figure flashed and he chased after Murongzheng with the broken sword in his hand. He quickly approached Murongzheng's divine soul. He wanted to cut the weeds and eliminate the roots. He wanted to take this opportunity to destroy Murongzheng's divine soul and kill him completely. Old man, it's time for you to die. Die! Ji Tianqing caught up with Murongzheng at the speed of light. He brandished his broken sword and slashed out a blazing white sword light, ruthlessly slashing towards Murongzheng's divine soul. Murongzheng's soul was injured, and his consciousness was blurry. He was unable to dodge or resist. Murong. At this moment, he was in utter despair. He could not see any hope of survival at all. It was as if he could foresee the arrival of death. But right at that moment, a miracle happened. Swoosh! A Tenjiang-long, dazzling divine golden light suddenly lit up in the night sky not far away, and rapidly shot towards them. Just as the white sword was about to hit Murongzheng's divine soul, the divine golden light finally arrived and blocked the white sword by a hair's breadth. Bam! There was a loud bang. The white sword and the divine golden light collided, creating a violent shockwave. The blazing white sword radiance exploded on the spot, exploding into countless fragments that scattered across the sky. Ji Tianqing had almost killed Murongzheng, but the sudden arrival of the divine golden light had allowed Murongzheng to escape the calamity and save his life. Murongzheng's divine soul was blown away and landed in the night sky thousands of meters away. He stopped in shock. He looked at the scene in shock and stared at the divine golden light. He wanted to know who had saved him. Ji Tianqing also stopped attacking. He looked at the divine golden light with a cold expression. The divine golden light quickly disappeared and revealed a sage-like old man. He stood in front of Ji Tianqing. The old man was tall and thin. He wore a loose white robe. His beard and hair were snow-white. He held a golden horsetail whisk in his hand. He stood in the air. His face was majestic and his eyes were like lightning. He exuded an aura that could suppress the world. Ji Tianqing and Murongzheng were stunned when they saw the white-robed old man's face. They could not believe it. Imperial Tutor. How did he get here? It's the Imperial Tutor. Why did he save me? There was no doubt that the sage-like white-robed old man was the Imperial Tutor. The Imperial Tutor looked at Ji Tianqing calmly. He waved the horsetail whisk in his hand and bowed. Tianqing, how have you been? Ji Tianqing immediately calmed down. He looked at the Imperial Tutor indifferently and bowed. Tianqing greets your Majesty, Imperial Tutor. May I know why your Majesty, Imperial Tutor has come here and why you want to save Murongzheng? His heart was filled with unwillingness. He was dissatisfied with the Imperial Tutor's actions, so he asked directly. What he asked was exactly what Murongzheng wanted to know. Murongzheng was not in a hurry to escape. He stopped 1,000 meters away in the night sky and stared at the Imperial Tutor. He wanted to see how he would answer. The Imperial Tutor nodded at Ji Tianqing and explained calmly, Tianqing, I'm here on the Emperor's orders. This old man knows that your killing intent has been aroused and you have vowed to kill Murongzheng on the spot, but please calm down and listen to this old man's explanation. Ji Tianqing knew that since the Imperial Tutor had appeared here, he must have something to do with the Imperial Court and the Emperor. Since the Imperial Tutor had stopped him, it was impossible for him to kill Murongzheng. Helpless, he could only suppress his killing intent and listen to the Imperial Tutor's explanation with an expressionless face. The Imperial Tutor hugged the horsetail whisk and said calmly, more than a year ago, Murong Lingfeng led a group of strong cultivators to attack you, but you killed them instead. From then on, I knew that you had a blood feud with the Murong family. It was almost impossible to resolve. I know Murongzheng's nature very well. This person is very shrewd. On the surface, he seems to be enduring, but because of the Imperial Court's prestige, he is enduring the humiliation. But in reality, he will not let it go. He will definitely wait for an opportunity to take revenge for Murong Lingfeng. But you and the Murong family are the mainstays of my family. You are the pillars of the Imperial Court. The Emperor does not want to see you kill each other. For the past year, Murongzheng has been secretly plotting against you. I have also sent spies from the Imperial Court to keep an eye on Murongzheng's movements. Chapter 12:21. After hearing the Imperial Tutor's explanation, Ji Tianqing and Murongzheng came to a sudden realization. No wonder the Imperial Tutor had appeared at this time and saved Murongzheng at this critical juncture. As it turned out, the Imperial Tutor had already predicted that this day would come more than a year ago. Over the past year, the Imperial Tutor had been paying attention to Murongzheng's movements. Ji Tianqing frowned and said in a cold voice, Imperial Tutor, since you've been monitoring Murongzheng, you should know that he was the one who deliberately tried to kill me tonight. I didn't intend to take revenge on the Murong family, you know this very well. However, Murongzheng was looking for death, so it was only right and proper for me to kill him. Why did you save him? Actually, there were some things that he understood. He also knew that tonight's matter was a foregone conclusion. He definitely wouldn't be able to kill Murongzheng. However, he couldn't take this lying down. He had to find the imperial tutor and ask for an explanation. The imperial tutor sighed and revealed a knowing smile. He nodded and said, "That's right. This old man is very clear about the cause of this matter. Tonight, it was Morongjeng who deliberately tried to kill you to take revenge. Even if you killed him, he deserved it. However, this old man just said that nothing can happen to you and the Morong family. This is the Emperor's wish. Now that the demon race is wreaking havoc in the world, our race will once again face a reign of terror. The Emperor must protect the peace of the human race and use all his strength to resist the demon race. He doesn't want to see the internal power of our race break apart. Tianqing, you've always been a man of great righteousness. You're also the prodigy that the Emperor relies on the most. This old man believes that you also don't want to see the demon race wantonly slaughter our people and our race's powerhouses wither away. No one can protect the common people, right?" Hearing this, Ji Tianqing fell silent. The imperial tutor and the emperor both know my nature very well. They used the demon race's rule as an excuse and used the common people as an excuse to make me spare Morongjeng. At this moment, the imperial tutor continued, "Tianqing, this old man announces on behalf of the emperor that this matter ends here. Back then, you killed Morong Lingfeng. Now, you are sparing Morongjeng's life. A life for a life, the debt between the two of you is cleared. The grudge between you and the Morong family will also end here. From now on, both sides are not allowed to seek revenge. Otherwise, the imperial court will intervene and severely punish the side that seeks revenge." When Ji Tianqing heard this, he felt a little conflicted. He sneered, "Imperial tutor, do you think that's possible? The enmity between me and the Morong family is already deep. Do you think you can resolve it with just a few words from you?" The imperial tutor looked at him expressionlessly and said in a solemn tone, "This is not what I said, but what the emperor said. No matter how deep the blood feud is between you and the Morong family, you must obey the imperial court's orders. Even if it is impossible, as long as the emperor gives the order, it will become possible, and we must obey the order." The imperial tutor's tone was low and dignified, containing an unquestionable domineering aura. Ji Tianqing fell silent again, unable to refute. After all, the human race in the world was under the jurisdiction of the imperial court. This was the rule and principle since ancient times. Unless he betrayed the human race, or if his strength far surpassed the imperial court, he had the right to go against the imperial court's orders and not be bound by the imperial court. Just like Kenshin 1,000 years ago, not only was he not bound by the imperial court, but the imperial court even asked him for help. When he thought of this, Ji Tianqing's heart became more and more eager to reach Kenshin's level as soon as possible and restore Kenshin's supreme glory. He was not a descendant of the imperial court, nor was he the emperor who controlled the human race. He could not abandon his personal grudges and protect the peace of the world. He yearned to become a peerless expert like Kenshin, unrestrained, coming and going like the wind, doing things according to his nature and preferences. That was the peerless expert who walked the world with his sword, the carefree god of the sword. At this time, the imperial tutor turned to look at Morongjeng, who was not far away, and asked in a deep voice, "Morongjeng, you heard this old man's words clearly, do you have any objections?" Morongjeng had just escaped a disaster and was saved by the imperial tutor, so of course he had no objections. He quickly sent a spiritual message and said in a serious tone, "Your Majesty imperial tutor, please tell His Majesty the Emperor that this subject will definitely obey His Majesty's orders and will not go against them. In addition, my Morong family will always be loyal to the imperial court and serve the human race." The imperial tutor's lips curved into a playful smile, and said in a dignified tone, "Very good. Morongjeng, you are indeed a person who understands the big picture. I hope you will always remember what you said tonight. Since your Morong family is loyal to the imperial court and serves the human race, this old man will now announce the emperor's second order. The emperor's order is that within half a year, Morongjeng will personally lead 100,000 elite soldiers of the Morong family to the battlefield in the north to resist the invasion of the demon army. As long as the chaos of the demon race is not quelled, Morongjeng and the soldiers of the Morong family will not be able to return to the central province. After announcing the emperor's order, the imperial tutor calmly added, "Morongjeng, your Morong family has a foothold in the central province, enjoyed 1,000 years of peace, and prospered. Now, the demon race is bringing disaster to the human race. It is time for the Morong family to step forward and pledge your loyalty to the imperial court, and shelter the human race from the wind and rain." When Morongjeng heard this, his soul was greatly shaken, and his mood was incomparably complicated. His words of righteousness were deliberately said for the imperial tutor to hear. Those words sounded dignified, expressing the Morong family's loyalty, but he was actually unwilling to fulfill it. But now, the emperor had ordered him to lead 100,000 elite soldiers of the Morong family to the battlefield to resist the demon army. He had just boasted of his loyalty, so he couldn't immediately go back on his words and disobey the emperor's order, right? Wouldn't that be slapping his own face? Moreover, did the Morong family have the right to disobey the emperor's order? Absolutely not. Damn it. The imperial tutor and the emperor, these two old fellows, have long seen through my nature and guessed how I would answer, so they set a trap for me in advance. Morongjeng's heart was filled with hatred, and he was so regretful that he wanted to vomit blood. Unfortunately, he didn't have a physical body, so he couldn't vomit blood even if he wanted to. After hesitating for a moment, he said with some difficulty, "Your Highness the imperial tutor, this subject will naturally obey the emperor's order, and will not dare to neglect it. But my Morong family's power is meager, and we only have a few thousand people. Where would we get 100,000 elite soldiers?" Hearing this, the imperial tutor immediately revealed a cold smile, and said in an indifferent tone, "Morongjeng, this old man and the emperor are well aware of the Morong family's power. Don't play around with those little ideas, it's just making people laugh. You only have half a year to heal your injuries, gather all the forces under your command, and gather 100,000 elite soldiers. Don't waste your breath with this old man here, quickly go back and heal your injuries, and prepare for the battle." Morongjeng was suddenly at a loss for words, he was full of shame from the imperial tutor's rebuke, and was speechless. Of course, the Morong family could gather 100,000 elite soldiers. But that was gathering all the forces under the Morong family's command, and gathering 80% of their elite warriors. Half a year later, he would bring 100,000 elite soldiers to the battlefield in the northern border, which was equivalent to bringing 80% of the Morong family's forces with him. Once 100,000 elite soldiers died on the battlefield, the Morong family would only exist in name. Chapter 12:22. Morongjeng was filled with grievances and depression as he fled with his tail between his legs. He had planned this for more than a year. He thought that tonight's operation would go smoothly and he would definitely be able to kill Ji Tianqing. But the final result was like this. Not only did he fail to kill Ji Tianqing, his body was also heavily injured by Ji Tianqing. His external incarnation was destroyed and his soul was injured. For the next 10 years, he was like a cripple. He had to go into seclusion to heal his injuries. What angered him the most was that half a year later, he had to take away 80% of the Morong family's elite warriors to fight against the demons at the border. The battlefield was an abyss and a bottomless pit that crazily devoured lives. Not to mention 100,000 elite warriors, even an army of 1,000,000 would gradually be eaten away and eventually be exhausted. If the Morong family lost 80% of their elite warriors, they would only be left with an empty shell. They would only exist in name. In this way, he would be the biggest loser. Not only would he lose himself, but he would also destroy the Morong family. The more Morongjeng thought about it, the angrier he became. He secretly cursed the emperor for being a sly old fox, despicable and shameless. Ji Tianqing and the imperial tutor stood in the dark night sky and watched as Murong Zheng's soul disappeared into the darkness. The two of them were 100 meters away from each other as they pondered in silence. Ji Tianqing was forced by the imperial court's prestige and had no choice but to accept this reality and obey the emperor's orders. He could understand the emperor's thoughts and intentions. He also guessed that Murong Zheng and the Murong family would not have a good ending. With this thought, he felt much better and gradually let go of his worries. After a while, he saw that the imperial tutor was still not leaving. He could not help but ask, "Imperial tutor, this matter is over. Do you have any other matters?" The imperial tutor stepped on the air and stopped 5 steps away from him. He looked at him with a deep gaze and said, "Of course I have other matters. This old man came not only to resolve the grudge between you and the Murong family, but also to say something to you face to face." Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and revealed a playful smile. "What you want to say, are you representing the emperor or yourself?" The imperial tutor smiled and shook his head. "Of course it's what I want to say. It has nothing to do with the emperor. Tianqing, you seem to have some complaints about the emperor's arrangement." Ji Tianqing looked at him expressionlessly. He did not answer, but he did not deny it either. This was because he knew that the imperial tutor was an immortal-like figure. Not only was he good at deducing the heavenly cycle, but he was also good at reading people's minds. Trying to deceive the imperial tutor's fiery golden eyes was harder than ascending to heaven. When the imperial tutor saw that he was silent, he smiled again and said in an indifferent tone, "You are young and full of vigor. Although you have great talent, your knowledge and experience are shallow. Therefore, it is normal for you to be unable to understand the emperor's actions. Moreover, your position and position are different from the imperial emperor's. Naturally, you can't understand the imperial emperor's intentions." Ji Tianqing gave him a deep look, then said with an indifferent tone, "That's right, your majesty is the monarch of the humankind. Of course, your thoughts are based on maintaining the stability of the humankind. In order to protect the people of the humankind, your majesty can sacrifice anyone in any force. This is his duty. However, I am just a martial artist in the secular world. I have 7 emotions and 6 desires, gratitude and hatred. Naturally, I want to be unrestrained and take revenge as I please. As for your majesty's way of handling this matter, I can understand it as making the best use of everything, right?" "Making the best use of everything," the imperial tutor murmured, trying to figure out the meaning of these words. After a while, he smiled and nodded, "That's right. Tianqing, your words are very accurate. It seems that you already understand your majesty's position and intentions. As one of the 3 great thousand ancient aristocratic families, the Murong family had a foothold in the central state. Under the protection of the imperial court, they had enjoyed 1,000 years of peace and prosperity. As the saying goes, the greater the power, the greater the responsibility. For the past 1,000 years, the Murong family had enjoyed a lot of glory and wealth. Now, they had to pay the same price. With the arrival of chaos, the demon emperor had returned to the throne. The demon race had brought chaos to the world. The people of the continent were about to be plunged into misery and suffering. However, the Murong family did not want to serve the imperial court or protect the people of the world. They only wanted to take revenge. How could the imperial court tolerate such selfish actions? Instead of letting the Murong family stay in the central state and enjoy peace, fighting openly and secretly with you and Cloud Spirit Palace, exhausting the power of my family and causing the human race to not be peaceful. It would be better to let all the elites of the Murong family go to the battlefield to serve the imperial court and sacrifice their lives to protect the people. This is what you meant by making the best use of everything. Even if all the elites of the Murong family die on the battlefield, we will not let down the protection and support of the imperial court for the past 1,000 years. Hearing the imperial tutor's words, Ji Tianqing had an indescribable complicated feeling in his heart. He looked up at the dark night sky and sighed in his heart, fortunately, I was not born in the imperial family. All day long, they play tricks and scheme. It's really depressing. I only hope that I can reach the peak of martial arts in this life, like Kenshin who became a god in the way of the sword. Using the sword to travel the world, blood staining the blue sky, killing all the injustices, my heroism will shake the ages. The imperial tutor saw that Ji Tianqing was silent, so he said calmly, Tianqing, whether you agree or not, whether you understand or not, the imperial tutor's order cannot be changed. You can only follow it. This old man will not mention this matter again. In the future, you must not seek revenge on the Murong family. Ji Tianqing thought for a moment and nodded, if the Murong family does not take the initiative to provoke me, naturally, there will be peace. If they come to deal with me again, at that time, I will definitely kill them all. At that time, I hope the imperial court will not stop me again. The imperial tutor nodded slightly and said, of course. This matter ended and the two of them did not mention it again. Then, the imperial tutor said in a serious tone, Tianqing, other than this matter, this old man also wants to tell you something. You must be mentally prepared. Ji Tianqing vaguely guessed something and asked with a frown, could it be, that the imperial tutor not only sent the Murong family to the battlefield, but also sent an order to the Cloud Soul Palace? The imperial tutor nodded and said, that's right. There are only 2 of the 3 ancient families left. The Murong family wants to mobilize 80% of their elites to the border to participate in the war. Naturally, the Cloud Soul Palace cannot avoid it. But don't worry, the imperial tutor's order to the Cloud Soul Palace is for Yun Zhongqi to lead 50,000 elite soldiers to the border to fight against the demons. The Cloud Soul Palace is now the most powerful family, so it is not difficult to mobilize 50,000 elite soldiers. It is only equivalent to 40% of the Cloud Soul Palace's elite warriors. Ji Tianqing frowned even more and asked doubtfully, Imperial Tutor, is the situation at the northern border really so dangerous that the Imperial Tutor has to make such an arrangement? You guessed right. The current situation has indeed reached a critical juncture. The Imperial Tutor nodded and admitted it. He said with a serious expression, for the past half a year, you have not been in the central province, so you do not know the situation at the northern border. After the bloodline shackles of the demons were removed, they developed extremely quickly. There were many geniuses and strong soul refinement cultivators. In the past, you killed 3 of the 6 great demon commanders, so there are only 3 left. But now, the number of demon commanders under the Demon Emperor has reached as many as 8. Even the Ghost Emperor, who established his own family 600 years ago, for some reason, surrendered to the ancient Demon Emperor. Chapter 12:23. The Imperial Tutor's words made Ji Tianqing frown deeply, and his expression became very serious. The demon race is completely unified, and there are 8 demon commanders. Even the Ghost Emperor has returned to the Demon Emperor's side. He looked at the Imperial Tutor in disbelief and asked in a low voice. The Imperial Tutor nodded and said with a serious expression, in the past year, the demon army has been divided into 3 armies. They attacked our race, the demon race, and the aquatic race respectively. The demon army this time is much stronger than 1,000 years ago. They dare to fight on 3 fronts at the same time. This shows the ancient demon emperor's ambition. The most frightening thing was that 2 months ago, some puppet-like great demons had appeared in the demon army. I personally investigated and found out that they are the demon blood gods that the demon emperor used an ancient secret technique to refine. Demon blood gods. Ji Tianqing's pupils constricted, and he said with a serious expression, back then, Yin Yao was captured by the demon emperor in the northern desert and refined into a demon blood god. A new demon soul was born in her body and destroyed her own consciousness. She became very powerful. The Imperial Tutor nodded and said, that's right. The ancient demon emperor successfully mastered this ancient secret technique and refined at least a few dozen demon blood gods. Each demon blood god carries a huge power of calamities and plagues. Under the escort of elite demon kings, they sneak into the camps and cities of our race. In the past 2 months, all kinds of calamities and plagues have been breaking out in the major cities and camps of the northern border. There are fire from the sky, blood from the ground, poisonous plagues, bone-corroding black winds, soul-sucking mental demons, and so on. There are all kinds of calamities and plagues. A few days ago, I received the battle report from the front line and did a rough calculation. In the past 2 months, the casualties on the northern border battlefield are as high as 600,000 people. More than a dozen cities have suffered calamities and plagues, and the casualties are more than 8 million. It's close to 10 million. It's not just our race. The demon race and aquatic races' battlefields are also in the same situation. Calamities and corpse puppets are everywhere. Ji Tianqing's expression changed immediately, and he asked in a serious tone, "The situation is so tragic. So many calamities and tribulations, isn't this the legendary 3 calamities and 9 tribulations?" The imperial tutor looked at him in surprise and asked, "Tianqing, you actually know about the legend of the 3 disasters and 9 tribulations?" Ji Tianqing was stunned for a moment before he hurriedly explained, "Back then, when Yunyao was captured by the Devil Emperor to the northern desert, I snuck into the Devil race alone in order to rescue her. After disguising myself, I lived in the Devil race for a few months. It was during that time that I learned about the legend of the ancestral Devil God. Legend has it that the ancestral demon god was known as the Grim Reaper and controlled the 3 calamities and 9 tribulations. Wherever he went, calamities would follow. Even the gods were unable to contend against him." The imperial tutor nodded solemnly and said, "That's right. Recently, the various disasters that have appeared on the battlefields at the borders of various races are very similar to the legendary 3 calamities and 9 tribulations. I also suspect that the calamities and plagues carried by the blood god scions are related to the ancestral fiend god's power. However, the ancestral fiend god is a fiend god from ancient times and has already fallen in the great war of the gods. It is impossible for him to have survived until now. Otherwise, the devil race would have already dominated the continent. I have been investigating this matter recently and have a headache over it. For the time being, I do not have a good plan to deal with it. I can only send people to investigate and capture those evil blood god scions. Tianqing, the current situation of the 3 races is very critical. Therefore, the emperor does not wish for any internal conflicts to arise among our races. The devil race is the common enemy of our 3 races. In this chaotic world, everyone should unite and deal with the devil race with all their strength. Only then will we have a chance of survival." Ji Tianqing was silent and did not say anything. However, a storm was raging in his heart. He recalled what Yunyao had said about the Blood River and the ancestral fiend god statue. At that time, he had told this secret to the palace master, hoping to attract the palace master's attention. However, the palace master had told him that even if the ancestral fiend god wanted to awaken and be reborn, it would still take 1,000 years. He had listened to the palace master's words and put this matter aside for the time being. However, he did not expect the situation to change so drastically in just a few months. The ancient fiend emperor had refined many more scions of the blood god, and each of them carried calamities and plagues. He could not help but suspect that the ancestral fiend god's power was rapidly recovering. It was even possible that he was about to be reborn. Once the ancestral fiend god was reborn, it would not be just a few million people who would die. The entire Tianxian continent's living beings and billions of people would turn into ashes under the 3 calamities and 9 tribulations. At this thought, Ji Tianqing's heart was filled with worry and anxiety. He hesitated for a moment and looked at the imperial tutor with a solemn expression. He said, "Imperial tutor, since you have told me such important news, I naturally understand the emperor's intentions. However, I have an even more urgent news to tell you. Please pass it on to the emperor when you return." Back then, Yunyao had been captured and brought to the heavenly devil palace in the northern desert. She had stayed in the devil race's sacred mountain for a few months. During that period, she would hear strange sounds coming from the river of blood every month, and a mysterious black shadow would appear. Later on, she discovered by chance that the ancient fiend emperor was secretly worshipping a strange statue. That was the ancestral fiend god's portrait. Yunyao and I have analyzed it in detail. We suspect that the ancestral fiend god may not have truly fallen, and there is still a trace of his divine soul or divine power remaining. Now that tens of thousands of years have passed, the ancient fiend emperor is likely to revive the ancestral fiend god and let the devil race take over the world and dominate the continent. Upon hearing this news, the imperial tutor's expression changed drastically. His deep eyes shone with a bright light. There's such a thing. The ancestral fiend god that disappeared during the Great War of the Gods is about to be reborn. It's no wonder that in the past year, I have been observing the stars and deducing the future of the universe. I have discovered that the blood chi in the northern desert is so dense that it seems to be about to swallow the world. In his agitation, he grabbed Ji Tianqing's shoulders with both hands and asked in a low voice, "Tianqing, why didn't you tell me this earlier? It's such an important piece of news that concerns the lives of the world." Ji Tianqing said in a low voice, "This is just my and Yunyao's guess. There's no basis for it. The great war between the ancestral fiend god and the gods is just a legend. Who would believe me if I told them? I did tell the mansion master about this, but he told me not to worry. Even if the ancestral fiend god has a trace of divine power remaining in the world, it will take thousands of years for him to be reborn." Sigh. Upon hearing this, the imperial tutor could only sigh helplessly. He placed his hands behind his back and looked up at the vast night sky. He sighed with a complicated tone. The mansion master is the most powerful person in the continent now, and he is also the most mysterious. He comes and goes without saying, as if he is carrying some secrets and conspiracies. Even I have only seen him a few times, let alone understand him. Tianqing, although you are the prince of the mansion master, you are also the most talented person of the human race and the domain master that the emperor values the most. I have to remind you that the mansion master is extremely powerful, and he is definitely not a kind person. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.